All right. Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, everybody. As usual, we're going to go till like 5 after, just for waiting. A little bit of evening coffee. My wife has this tea that's really good. You guys have the tea? She has this, there's a couple teas actually, but um, I'm going to say just right away with tomorrow, we will not be uh, here. And I probably will be making it up on Saturday, like during the day. So please watch the schedule, the Google Calendar, which is at the bottom of my About page on Twitch. Just make sure you check that out. There is a Google Calendar link that you can follow as well, and you can add that if you want to do that. Um, my wife is yeah, the fish tank is back. I just so everybody knows, I have to drop for a good 5 minutes before I start a new stream because I have to get it set up and I have to turn the sound off and everything. So I have a nice happy cut. I did not have a chance to cut up last night's videos. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try. I know it's hard, but I'm going to try to cut up all the videos on the weekend, and I'll be posting the raw VOD to the site. And of course, the site is github.com/rwxrob/boost. It's in the title. You can click on it. That is the central place to go for all things related to the boost. So some of you are asking today, where's the movie links? Some of you are asking other stuff. It's not going to take long for me to cut the videos because I've marked them all up. So I'll still be marking up the videos, but then that way when 9 o'clock comes around, I can go walk the dog and I can go to bed and work the next day. I can't. Monday this week, I had like 6 videos to chop up and make stuff for, and then just wasn't happening. Which was not happening. It was not happening. So yeah, I mean, and I don't know how many. We had a lot of followers come in today. I appreciate all the follows. If anybody here is new, a lot of people have been reporting they've been coming from YouTube. So I'm going to keep with the YouTube stuff. No, the full VODs will expire within 60 days. So this is, let me know what you guys think. But the VOD will be put up on the Boost. It will not be published to YouTube. Maybe I should do that. What do you think? What I'm thinking of doing is, I mean, what I really need to know is how many people are following on YouTube, and those people can't respond because they're not here. People at YouTube are already used to waiting. So they're going to be waiting for like, a full day. One of the things I could do is I could publish, I could send the whole VOD to YouTube. You would rewatch the VODs on YouTube? Yes. Okay. And to tell you the truth, there's really no reason for me to take the VODs down off of YouTube as well. So if somebody, you know what we'll do? I'll make 2 playlists. How's that? We were going to have this be kind of like a private thing, right? I'll make 2 VODs on 2 playlists on YouTube. I'll make the playlist that has the highlights chopped out of it that's been really, crunched. And then I'll have just the raw 2-hour videos, and I'll put those in a playlist, and it'll be day 1, day 2, day 3, and then people can watch all 2 hours if they want, uninterrupted, and they can see all the chat in between and stuff like that. They can feel like they're in the community. And there's really no reason not to do that. I mean, I'm not, other than the big 5-minute breaks in between that we don't really talk about anything. You like that idea? Okay. The other thing about that is that I can edit the list so that if you go to the Boost GitHub page, it has a link and says will eventually expire, and I can just remove that. YouTube after the Boost ends. Yeah. Well, actually, I can. Yeah. the complete 2-hour version. Sometimes less choices are better. Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing of it. So one of the reasons that I want to immediately send the boost to YouTube as soon as it ends at 9 o'clock is because that way I have a backup. Because I'm not recording them. I know I probably should be, but I mean, I have in the past. So that gives me a backup. So that says, on YouTube we'll have a copy, and we'll have a copy here. And so I'll just do that. I'll just push, and then actually what's really cool about that is I can actually go through the playlist on YouTube, and I can find the stuff that I want to highlight, and I can refer to it specifically by date and time in the highlights. So when I'm actually chopping the VODs up, and then the VODs, if they die, who cares? All right, so that's a good thing to talk about. Thank you for that, helping me figure that out. We got a lot to cover tonight, so let's jump right in. We're gonna jump right in. We're gonna do some technical things today. Today we're getting into the science of learning, less of the motivation. That was yesterday, and I'm super excited about this because a lot of it's stuff that I've discovered very recently, including this whole Zettelkasten method that I've been using. And my danger today is going to be talking about something too much, so I have to make sure to time box and to put markers on things. And I'll try to do the Pomo at the same time, to keep myself, timed. I don't want to go over on any particular thing. So let's jump in. So CD back into Boost. If you want to follow along, again, you can open up the Boost webpage. Again, here it is. Boost webpage, github.com/rwxrob/boost. We'll have the Pomo. Yeah, we'll definitely have the Pomo. And I just want to let you know here. So these Zettels, I'm gonna tell you what a Zettel is. A Zettel. I don't say it right. My wife gives me a hard time all the time. She says I don't say it right, but it means slip. We're gonna talk about that today. But these are all Zettels. So they just have a README, and sometimes they have a few other files in there, but mostly it's just a README. And it means slip or note. And this is an ISOSEC. We're gonna get through all that. You notice there's not very many of them here, and that's because a lot of this stuff is actually in my main Zettelkasten. So I have not mentioned this before, but I notice I have a lot of watchers on this boost, which is great. I mean, this boost, you'll get a notification. I'm going to show you how to do that with that RSS, how to set up notification if you want it. But this stuff here links to, that one doesn't, but some of the other ones, they link across boundaries to the other boosts. And one of the really great things about that is the link is consistent. So that's still kind of a logistical thing. I just want to make sure you know that. So what I'm kind of saying is that if you want, you can follow my personal Zettelkasten. If you follow my personal Zettelkasten, though, fair warning, we're still in logistics mode here for a bit. If you follow my Zettelkasten, understand that this is raw, unfiltered Rob. That this is the bastard operator from hell. The BOFH is what you're going to get. And today, I'm pretty sure I yelled at someone enough for them to leave. Because for the sake of everyone, hopefully, at least they won't lose their job. And I just bring attention to this because this is a noob gets reamed for Oh My Z Shell and NeoVim in prod. And now I am not going to read this post because I can't on a YouTube video. If you read it at your own peril. The point I'm making here is that if you do follow, there's an F word. If you follow my Zettelkasten, there's a lot of swearing and there's a lot of ranting, and it's very, very raw. It's not polished. That's what a Zettelkasten is. It's a place for raw thought dumping, and we're going to talk about that today. So, but just know that's a thing. When life gives you is make lemonade. Tomatoes, max the Tmux status time management tool. All right. So with that fair warning on that other stuff, we're going to jump into day 2 here, and we're going to cover this material here. And some of this stuff has links pending, some of it doesn't. So we're just going to do it very quickly. In fact, I can probably cover the RWX method in one long segment, but I'm going to mark it anyway. So let's do that. But before we do, let's change the topic to the scientific method, and I probably should put. Let's gonna put another thing in here. This other thing too is I can do this very real. It's like, what did you learn about the scientific method? So this is actually a question for everybody. What is your? I mean, I know it's a lot to write, but if I was able to communicate, like to speak with you, I'd be asking the question: what is your understanding of what the scientific method is? So we'll do this together. Let's pretend like we don't know, and we have to look at it. We're going to look it up. This is a little bit of research. It's the R, right? So I'm going to do a search to say, what is the scientific method? Again, this is showing you this. The purpose of the boost is to help you learn what you should know, in my opinion, and then kind of where to find it, but not to do it for you. So a lot of times when I'm doing it, I'm going to be acting like you doing it, which means I would search for it, right? So the scientific method. The scientific method is an empirical method of acquiring knowledge that has characterized the development of science since at least the 17th century. It involves careful observation, applying rigorous skepticism about what is observed, giving that cognitive assumptions can distort one's interpretations of the observation. So there's another one from Khan Academy. The scientific method is used in all sciences, including physics, chemistry, geology, and psychology. It's actually much more than that, I'm going to argue. And then what? And however, they use the same core approach to finding answers that are logical and supported by evidence. A scientific method, mathematical and experimental technique employed in the sciences, more specifically is a technique used in construction and testing of a scientific hypothesis. I think somebody mentioned that. Flowchart and scientific method. So we've already got a lot of hits there about what it is, and that's fine. Here's the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of a scientific method: principles and procedures for the systematic pursuit of knowledge. I love this one. This is my favorite so far. Principles and procedures for the systematic pursuit of knowledge involving the recognition and formulation of a problem, the collection of data through observation and experiment, and the formulation and testing of hypotheses. All right, that's hands down my favorite. So short answer, scientific method since the 17th century is the words that we use to describe how humans learn. I mean, really learn, how they get as close as possible to truth. And it's characterized as being related to science, of course, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, when I was Mormon, a little story, when I was Mormon, one of the favorite lessons that I used to teach as a Mormon, I'm not going to bag on Mormons or Mormon people or great people. And one of the lessons was the use of science in religion to discover truth, to discover religious truth. And we can't leave this topic without talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson's definition of the of truth, and you probably know him. You can go look him up. There's a great YouTube of him talking about this. And he said that there is, I think, 3 types of truth. Let's go look. Neil deGrasse, did I spell that right? Tyson, pursuit of truth. It's one of his favorite things to talk about because he thinks it's one of the reasons that we're all messed up. All right. In fact, there's the clip right there. So I'll get you guys the clip. Oh, wait. It'll be in the notes. But you can go search for it. And find your own. Let's go see if we can get to his definition. In his 5-minute clips, and Joe Rogan. Yeah, this is the Joe Rogan one I've seen before. The 3, an audio clip. Did they actually write it? Please tell me he wrote it down. Okay, so there we go. There's 3 types of truth. And this, we can't talk about the scientific method. Is it deGrasse? I don't know. I don't know how to say his name. I always say deGrasse. If it's French, it's deGrasse. Neil deGrasse Tyson. C'est comme ça on dit en français. Il y a les francophones là. Levez la main si vous êtes français, si vous êtes un francophone. Okay, so ontological truth, which is like our existence things. He actually talks about it in a much better way. Epistemological truth. These are like big words. I like words. God knows I love words, but it's not that fancy. So there's truth about the world around us, and how things work. There's personal truth, which is like our own personal truth, what drives us. You know what? I almost want to watch it, but I don't get YouTube dinged. And then there's epistemological truth, which is knowing how we know what we know. That's what that is, the philosophy. You know, like what is our personal truth? Uh, and then there's the methodological truth, which is like how you do things, and that kind of applies here because we're going to be talking about uh, yeah. Just him interrupting for Joe for 3 minutes. Yeah. So, but there, so this, in the terms of science, the point I'm trying to make and the point we used to teach in church is that you can apply the scientific method to arriving at spiritual truth, metaphysical truth, as well as physical truth, as well as scientific truth. That there's different kinds of truth. And in Tyson's words, that we get confused because most search engines are just big confirmation bias machines. That's his word. I love that. That means that they tell you what you want to hear, and so you don't ever get a different opinion. Sometimes there's not a different opinion. The world is round, people. That's objectively true. That's not, we shouldn't have an equalized debate about that. There's a lot of things like anyway. So we're going to be talking a lot about learning and the science of learning and the techniques to do the learning. And you can't talk about learning without talking about the scientific method. And that means applying the scientific method to all areas of our lives, which means finding truth about the world around us and how it works, how people behave, what's the best way to teach, what's the best way to learn, all of those things. Those are all truths that can come about through, actively participating in learning laboratories and, the whole scientific method. And I actually, many of the techniques that I use, I've never been formally trained for education, but many of the truths I've learned about how people best absorb the learning, things like one-on-one versus one-on-three even, I've written extensively about it in my blog, which I'm eventually going to have to move over, because I observed them in what I used to call my learning lab, which was SkillStack. So I had a classroom, and I would tweak it, and then I would tweak it again. Sometimes I would ask the people, just like I ask you, what do you think we should do? And we would adjust the control, which you're not supposed to do in scientific method. You're supposed to leave the control, there to get a true experiment. And I would adapt and control it and change it, and then kind of assess which one was doing it well. Now, you don't have to be, my take is that you don't have to be super formal in your scientific method when you are using it to manage your own knowledge every day. And that gets into the methodological truth. Like, so what is the best way to do this? What is the best way to do this in this given situation? The philosophical truth is like what drives you, what makes you want to do what you want to do. Is there a God? What does what does it look like, or he or she or whatever? Those are kind of things. We're not obviously not going to talk about those things, but I just trying to get the point that scientific method can be used in all areas. It can be used in how to make you a better coder or a DevOps person. It can be used, for all levels of truth. All right, so I'm going to put a mark in the end of that, and a sample set, so that is a challenge. I know, isn't that weird? It's totally true, though. It's totally true. I totally get that. Yeah, I completely agree with that. So, so that's the first part. We talked about the scientific method there. I'm not going to bother changing the topics. I'm just going to put marks in if everybody's okay with that, because I'll be having to put those in there later. So now let's go ahead and does somebody have a question about that? I'm hypnotizing you. Stop. Woo. All right. No poem. We're going to do it right now. Here comes a poem for the next topic. So we'll have a poem. This is gonna block us for the next one. We're just going to keep going through this as soon as we can. So I'm going to put a mark here. Give me a second here. So the RWX method, what is that? So I'm going to put that on the screen, though. Hey, Ethan, how's it going? It's good to see you, man. So we talked about the scientific method and all of that. So I need that because I'm going to make that my thumbnail. That's all. So we talked about, so pretend like I'm talking. So we talked about the scientific method and how it's the basis of everything. Except for it's kind of big and hard to do. It's actually not complicated. It's just, and what is it, by the way? Go study it. But basically, you form a hypothesis, which means you form an idea, which takes some guessing and creativity, by the way, and imagination. We talked about that yesterday. And then once you have that, then what? Then you can move that and say, well, let's test it. And there's lots of different ways of testing it out, observing the changes, and usually have a control versus you can get into that. I told you the boost is to help you learn what to learn. I'm not going to tell you how to learn the scientific method. But I want to move on to sort of my angle on the scientific method, which I call it RDBX method. And we're going to talk about that now. So I'm going to go ahead and put a mark in this. Refinement of a scientific method. Okay, ready? And we're going to be talking about this for 20 minutes, and I'll take a break. All right, so in this video, I want to talk about my wife brings in the coffee, so I can't. Don't spell on me.
You keep moving it. I was like, is he trying to get it in the frame or something?
There it is. Our air conditioner makes the door sounds like it gets slammed every time. So the RDBX method, what is it? Is it just some gimmick? No, actually, it's kind of, I got to tell you the story about RDBX a little bit just to tell you where it came from. So RDBX Live for Virtual. So first things first, some time ago, I was trying to find a different username than that wasn't lame. and the RDBX thing had always been kind of on my mind. And yeah, the door, we have the AC on, so it slams my door. It makes it sound like she's really angry going out the door. So the RDBX method is simply, the name came from the fact, if you don't know about this, a lot of people didn't know this. At least 10 times last year, I've had somebody say, oh, I just got what your name is about. Okay, does anybody else want to guess? We're going to talk about Unix permissions later, but RWX is read, write, execute. Those are the permissions, is full permissions on any file or directory. And if it's on a file, that means that the file can be read, it can be written to and changed, and it can be executed. It means it can be shared with other people and stuff. Everybody can see it. So there's lots of metaphorical things at many levels for RDBX here. The permissions, giving yourself full permissions to learn, is one of the reasons I have it. Yeah, and it's also just kind of fun because my name is ROB, so it just kind of goes with it. When you see the permissions of somebody on a file, you see the RDBX here, right? RDBX, right? So I thought it would be fun to just play on that a little bit. And you should refer to Reapers as DWRX. Yeah, maybe DRWX. And so that's where that comes from. But so why pick it beyond that? Well, I actually kind of got looking at it, and I actually uncovered something in this that at first it was like, well, there's an acronym in here, let's use it, let's have some fun with this. And I was like, read, write, execute. I was like, gosh, one day, honestly, without any really thinking about it, I was like, that actually is kind of a that guy from the video game, nothing is true, everything is permitted. Yeah, it was kind of like, I had a moment where I really realized that there's more to this. It's like full perms, I was like, whoa, that's kind of what I'm about giving people full perms, And I was like, well, what are the perms? What are the permissions that RDBX gives you? And does this apply to humanity, and to learning? And then I started getting into it some more. I'm like, read, write, execute. Oh my God. I started getting tingles. I was like, giving you permission to read, to write about it, which everybody knows I do a lot of, and to execute, to actually go execute on it, not to just, think about it all the time, but to go execute on what you're doing. I was like, man, this has got legs here. And and now we're all root, right? Yeah. There's like tons of mantras you can play with this. And then as I got to thinking about it, so, well, is there anything else? Because actually this came about because execute, I was like, well, people can just read execute. They're going to think I'm talking about killing people. Read, write, execute. I'm like, no, not like the French Revolution execute. I'm talking about execute like as in, deliver and do something like that. Well, what's another word for that? I was like, well, experience or explore or, experiment, execute. Those are all different things. And then I can't remember where I was in a live stream. All of us were just having fun with it. Exterminate. Read, write, exterminate. I haven't thought of that one. Read, write, guillotine. You guys are much more witty than I am. And so we were just shooting the breeze, each shoots and leaves. And we were just having fun with it. And we started to think about all the different ways of going about it. And believe it or not, we actually arrived at the RWX method. And I just made the association with the scientific method this year. And actually, I didn't make it. And once again, I have to credit somebody in the stream. I don't remember, but it was somebody in the stream that says, "So you're talking about the scientific method?" I'm like, "You know what? I am." And so let's get into what it was that that went with that, and what we mean by that. So here we go. So day 2, the scientific method. So of course, the original is read, write, and then, and I don't even have execute in here anymore. I feel bad. I should probably put it back. Execute has to be there because it's the original, right? Execute my commands. So we were just having fun with it, and I can bring these back over again now. So how about that? And so we started thinking about, some of them are kind of a reach, but I actually started changing. So people ask me what it means now, and I won't lie. Sometimes I act like I've had this meaning in my head all along, and I had that level of creativity to come up with the name and everything. I didn't. It was just this kind of like, just like ongoing evolution of people playing with the words, with wordsmithing and stuff. That's really what it is. But some of the words actually stuck. And I want to talk about what the words that stuck, because they do apply to this refinement. And we have 16 minutes to cover them all, so don't worry, we're going to take a break. But so read, obviously. So if you're going to learn, you have to take in information. Obviously, you have to read. And I don't know how many people are so averse to reading these days. Get over it. Just get over it. I have a hard time reading in my free time because I do so much looking at a screen during the day. So I don't read I do actually, but I don't read it. I don't know, maybe. I have nobody to compare myself to. Comparing her to my wife, who read the whole Witcher series in like a day. I swear, she's the fastest reader I've ever met. And I don't read very fast. I read to go deeply into it. I used to read Tolkien, Lord of the Rings every year. And when I read Tolkien, it takes me like a month to read one book, because I like to really dig into the meat of it. I like to, to just savor every, creative use of prose that Tolkien does. And so that makes me a real geek, I know, but I don't care. But he's a good Colbert fan too, right? Yeah, but so they're reading, you have to do it. And there's 2 types of reading that we need to talk about. You need to be able to do reading for comprehension, and you need to be able to do reading for scanning and understanding. And this distinction is not taught in school. They do teach you reading comprehension, which is good. And they try to teach you to read quickly, but they don't really teach you the reading that's required to be a technologist. When I'm reading a man page, a bash, let's say, which is like, how many pages long is this thing? How long is it? Oh, there we go. How many lines? Bash is 5,405 lines. This is the biggest man page out there. It would be a small book if you printed it. And it's a pretty stinking big book, but in order to read, to get answers really quickly, I need to be able to go to programmable, let's do parameter expansion. So this is the type of reading I'm talking about. I'm talking about scanning really fast, And here, oh, we got it. We got parametric match. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Just think over that. That kind of reading, that counts as reading. It's more scanning. So if there was an S in there, set UID, maybe, we could put that in our little group of word letters. But I believe that this kind of reading is actually as important as reading for comprehension, because this kind of reading is not really reading, it's scanning to find the thing. And I want to punch this point because we're going to come back to it later when we learn how to search the web and read man pages using links. Because of the consistency of the font on the screen, it actually makes it much faster to read, not just because of the speed of not loading JavaScript and images and stuff, but because of the consistency in the font and the spacing, where stuff is. You can allow your eyes to glaze, whether it's a man page or you wanted to read about Bash on the internet. You could go, I didn't know what, Bash, Introduction to Bash from Microsoft Docs. Okay, the Wikipedia page, let's go read that. Those are pretty readable. So you can scan the page really fast. But as you can see, the text interface is consistent across the board. So scanning for reading and for meaning and for identifying answers, getting answers quickly is really, really important. So there's reading for knowledge and getting answers. The first part of the scientific method is, formulating a problem. So getting the answer to that problem, you're going to be reading a lot, and you're going to be reading / scanning a lot. The other form of reading, of course, is the kind where you kind of comprehensively go through a thing. And I'm kind of doing that with Learning Go, the book that just came out right now, where I read every page as fast as I can, but for comprehension. And I'm doing it to make sure I didn't miss anything. So there's some reading that's like seeking a goal, and there's some reading that's for comprehension. You want to actually not skip stuff because you want to remember it. But the other one, they're both very important. I don't think scanning is given the credit that it really needs, and it's certainly not taught. So that's something to practice. You'll get a lot of practice with that if you learn to use the terminal method I'm talking about, which we'll keep going on. So reading is the thing. You have to do it. It's fundamental. Reading is obviously a key part of research. And if you don't do research, you can't get answers. The word research is also a more formal way to say training yourself how to do something. I have to do a stand-up every day in my new job, and that means there's a lot of that time right now because I'm just starting. I don't know Kubernetes, where I have to spend that time teaching myself how to do something, and I don't want to put down practicing things so I can learn them because I don't know them. So what do I put? I put Kubernetes API research. Because it sounds better, but it is. The research is about searching as well. So that's where links is going to come in a lot, and the Zettelkasten is going to come in a lot to be able to find answers. Getting answers to your questions is the most important skill of all the skills you have in tech. It is the single most important skill, is being able to search and find answers. People use Google for the verb there, whatever you want. But being able to, and sometimes it's a man page, sometimes it's a search engine, whatever. Getting an answer as fast as possible on the search engine. I have a story about this. I am going to run over my time a little bit. We had a group of people. There were a bunch of young people from about 12 to 14 that were in class. And there was, I said a question. Okay, I asked the question. I said, okay, well, what is blah? And everybody just sit there and said, has anybody ever heard of this? And they didn't know what it was. And what ended up happening was, there was one snarky kid in the background, like going like this. He was like searching Google on my big 40-inch screen. I could see him doing it. He was searching for the answer, and then he turns to me and he kind of very dryly reads to me the answer. And then some other kid said, hey, he cheated. He searched it out. And I said, yeah, he did. And he did it faster than you. He wins. And it was a girl, I remember, and she was angry. She was angry. So this idea that searching for answers makes you lesser of a technologist is bullcrap. It's bullcrap. It keeps popping up. I keep getting people have it associated with their imposter syndrome. They will show I on Twitter. I don't know how many times I've seen junior people on Twitter saying, "Oh, I feel so bad, dirty. I'm finding searching for things on myself." And then I hear other veterans say one of the biggest known secrets or one of the least known secrets out there is that really being a senior just means you know how to search faster. People are making jokes and stuff about this, and it's true. So as we go forward, the single fastest ability you need to have, besides even typing, is knowing how to get answers. Knowing how to get answers as fast as possible. Because there's no way your brain can remember all that. Einstein famously said that he didn't need to remember anything except for how to get to the library. Because the library has everything he needs to look up. Now, he could obviously, your brain is not for storage. Your brain is your CPU. It's the thing that you use for processing. So learn to find this stuff and then use other things like Zettelkasten, which is a file system for your brain. That's what I'm going to call it. In fact, I might have to rename it. I'm going to have to say, how about that? No, we need to keep the other stuff. Knowledge management system is what people will search for. But that's what it is. It's a file system for your brain. And something you can look up really quick. Zettel, the second brain. Yes. So things like parameters, sometimes parameters and things, because you use them over and again, you'll learn them, but you don't have to remember everything all the time. People ask me all the time about code completion. Why don't you use code completion? I say, I can search for that thing with full examples and documentation faster than you can select the right code completion thing, with like IntelliSense and stuff like that. We'll talk about that later. So I spend a lot of time about read. It's probably the most important one. I mean, actually execute's the most important one. So we're getting close to our time, so I'm going to move on. Reach out. So reach out is part of research. If you've read a lot and you've done a lot of research, then it's time to reach out. But don't reach out until you've done that. Don't walk over to the cubicle next to you or something like we used to do and ask the person the information that you could have looked up or read. But if you still can't get the answer, do that. Do that. It's fine. Go to the Discord, go to IRC, do a live stream, surround yourself with people who know so that you can reach out to them when you need, and this is part of the mentoring thing. So you can reach out to people who, and they may not be mentors, it may be just peers. But this is what's behind the pair programming idea, is you've got 2 or 3 heads that are working on the problem, and so they can get through the problem much more quickly because they take turns focusing on different things, and they're sort of built in reaching out because they're sharing their brain sort of while they're doing it. But you can also do that quite quickly, and this is one of the reasons that IRC is so valuable. IRC and Discord, these real-time chat mechanisms, Slack, are a way for you to reach out really quickly to other people and connect and do those kind of things to test your initial ideas. You got to come up with a hypothesis. That means you've got to kind of explore what that could be, and that comes from reading, research, and reaching out. Through those methods, those primary methods, you're going to get to the question, and you're going to create the next sort of step on that. Master has failed more time, plus 42. So when you get to the next part, so then after you've done a whole bunch of research and stuff like this, this is a step that everybody skips. I'm going to tell you, everybody skips this, and I'm going to encourage you not to, because it does take time. As fast as possible, capture what you have read, researched, reached out, and repeated, or whatever. All that stuff, summarize it as succinctly and as possible so that you have a record of your understanding. That is your primary method for self-assessment. If you are not writing stuff down, if you write stuff down, if you take the time to write it, and I would suggest in some cases writing it on paper because it slows you down. I have a Zettelkasten that I keep on paper when I need to summarize a new concept, and writing it on paper causes you to think about what's going on. So the cognitive process, your brain is like, spinning, and it's coming up with the best words and the best way to say it. When you write it down, it's the next best thing to teaching somebody else. And teaching somebody else is hands down the best confirmation of your knowledge. It's the best way to assess that you know it. If you know it, you can teach it simply. That saying's out there everywhere. Yes, they will. So you can succinctly tell everybody else what's going on, and you know it. But if you can tell that to yourself first by picking the right words for it and writing it down, whether it's in a Zettelkasten note or it's on a piece of paper in a journal, that will do that. And even if you're a creative artist, my wife, she does a thing called morning pages. It's a popular thing with artists where every morning she just lets her creativity flow onto the page, and it helps her solidify her thoughts. So you have the thoughts that are there, but seeing them on paper and writing them down on a screen or something, that process just really helps solidify that cognition that you're having, And so what would you do? You would write, not knowing something if you resist to learn it. Yeah, 5-minute warning. I know. So we have this. We have writing. So what would you write? You write who, what if? Like, what if I change this? This is part of the scientific method. When did it happen? Where is it happening? Why? How is it all working? These are these questions. Ask questions while you're doing the writing. Ask yourself, come up with the other angles on it before you start to test your hypothesis. And then you execute. Then you execute on your hypothesis. And that starts by creating a lab, what I call a learning lab. A lab is not, it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge laboratory. In some cases it is. Some cases people will develop an entire laboratory just to determine, how cells divide in a particular atmosphere. But the process of doing that, of creating a controlled environment to learn a specific thing in a modular way. And if you notice, a lot of labs, they'll have different labs. When I was in middle school, we had a thing called Module Shop. And they would have different modules. One was for anodizing things. Another one was like buffing. Another one was welding. It was wood shop. They had these little modules, and they were all miniature little labs where you could experiment with the technique and learn the skill and just get a taste of all the different sort of manufacturing processes that were involved in shop. So it wasn't just metal shop. It wasn't just, something like that. It was actually exposure to many things. And creating the lab is a really big part of this. In my case, I create a lab, a Zettelkasten lab these days, which means that I have a directory that has all of the stuff that I need to test a specific thing. So one example of that recently I've been doing is learning how to install Jupyter Hub into a Kubernetes cluster such that it can share directories and home directories with notebooks in it for all the users. So that is my lab. I set it up, but that's a complicated lab. A simpler lab, and I have about 50 of these that I need to get out there. I have to move them over that I use at SkillStack for Python. I have a bunch of Python labs. The first lab of all is Hello World. And in fact, I still have it somewhere. And just to give you a sense of what's coming over, RVX Rob, RVX.gg. This is old stuff, but let's see, language. I used to call them challenges. And so here's the first one, Hello World. This is a learning lab. All right, so it's like create a program that prints the hello world and run it from the command line on the console locally. Requirements: make sure it includes a safe shebang line in the script. When /hello, then print hello world. Notice I didn't say the language. So you can actually take some of these learning labs and you can apply them to different languages. You can say, okay, and there's actually a thing called Rosetta Stone, which has how to do certain tasks in every one of like 100 different languages. It's really interesting. So that's what a learning lab is. A learning lab is, okay, I am just going to try this. I'm going to make a Discord bot. I'm going to make an interactive story game. I'm going to make a Magic 8-Ball program. I'm going to do it. And just set forth the lab for yourself. I'm going to recreate something that already exists. That's TJ's idea. And then you're going to be able to really deliver on that, because as you're going through it, well, this didn't work. So I need to go research some more and do a little bit more of it. I need to adapt and change and reach out and get more feedback on it. And that's really where the primary learning is happening. 70% of learning is the hands-on stuff. It's not sitting there and listening to the person in training on a Zoom call, telling you everything to do and watching them do it. How many of you have actually learned something from that? You may have seen what you need to learn how to do, but then some of these programs, they don't give you a chance to go try it. You don't ever get a lab to do it. And that's O'Reilly actually very recently, I have no association with them, but O'Reilly actually, I became aware of something that they call scenarios for DevOps, and they have a bunch of containerized labs, which is really great because we're going to learn about Docker containers. You can actually use a container as your lab and then throw the whole thing away if you screw it up. You can do the whole thing again, and if you want to help other people learn, you can set up a lab in a container that has like a vulnerability. You could have a computer set up with a vulnerability and say, go find the vulnerability, ready, go. And they do this on TryHackMe. They do this on Hack the Box. So containerization has provided a lot of opportunity in the technology realm for learning labs to experiment and practice and exercise. I've got 27 seconds left, but I cannot leave this without talking about exercise. We might even go over a little bit, just a little. Exercise is what gives you the solidity into your brain. So the Ebbinghaus, there was a study that was made that most knowledge is lost after the first. People's attention spans are limited to 40 minutes, and people would lose everything within a week and a half if they didn't use it. And among the people that were able to keep their stuff, they were the ones who, what he called, overtrained on the thing. The reason that in martial arts that they repeat the movement so many times is so that the movement gets so ingrained in your brain that it just happens. The reason that, you're going to do some Vim tutors and stuff like that is because you want it to get it ingrained into your brain. And I'm gonna keep going over. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go over at least a minute. One of the problems with the challenges, the challenge-based approach. I've eliminated the word challenge from my vocabulary when it comes to this topic, because a challenge is fun. I did this and I earned this thing. That's always really fun, but you don't learn. When you do a challenge, you don't repeat it. Unless you repeat the challenge 10 times, then you learn. Otherwise, it's just a motivator for you to get to that point. And I've seen this happen. I put 40 people through Free Code Camp's web design. They all got the certificate. None of them, except for two. There were two who had already done it ahead of time. None of them could complete a web page after they finished. Not a single one. We spent a month and a half on that, and not a single one could do it. Why? The reason they couldn't do it is because Free Code Camp, the challenge system, does not have you repeat anything. It sets up the situation where you win the day and then you move on to the next thing. And so this gamification of education is failing in many ways because it's not creating a situation where you repeat it. All right. When you're trying to do headshots in Overwatch or whatever, I know, don't laugh at me, but when you're trying to do, whatever. What makes you good? Repeating it. In Russian, there's a saying, "Повторение мать учения." It means repetition is the mother of learning. And it might sound, yeah, you found it. Thanks for finding the curve for forgetting. That's the one I was looking for. Thanks, Metal. So you have to repeat it, and that means exercising. There is a site out there called exorcism.io. It's got a good approach and everything. I happen to think that some of the particular techniques that they are doing out there are a little bit outdated. And that's really the problem with any exercises, because they're gonna get out of date. So here's what's important: you need to learn how to make your own exercises. You don't need any of the other places. You don't need to go to Free Code Camp or to go to Code Academy or to go, everything. You can make your own exercise. You have permission to set up the conditions of your own lab. And the reason you'll be able to do this is because you will have done the reading and the research to figure out what it is next that you need to learn. You'll set up the conditions. You'll write down some scenarios about how you could set that up. Then you'll write down some of the ways that you need to set this up for yourself. And you don't need training wheels. You don't need it. And everybody keeps depending on these systems where you go in there and the lab's all set up for you and you just finish the whole thing and you feel like you've learned it and you move on. And sometimes they give you a certificate and then you're full of cognitive dissonance because you actually don't know that you don't know anything. You just got the certificate and now you got this thing on your wall and now somebody hires you and then you try to do it professionally and you can't do it. And you're like, what the F? Why can't you do this? You says you know it. So it's more important for you to take control of your learning and be able to produce your own experimentation, your own explorations, be able to do your own exercises on something. Like for me, I was watching Prem Agin the other day, and he's a big DAP fan. And that's the first time that I'd ever seen DAP, honestly. And I've been doing Vim for a long time because I was a VI guy and he did DAP. And he was telling me, he was, in his own way, he was saying dap, dap, dap. And, sometimes I'm a little hard on him for doing Control-C for escape and stuff like that. But that was an opportunity for me. So now I have to exercise dap everywhere I go. I got to start doing that to learn how to cut and paste paragraphs as fast as possible. Exercise. You got to set up that own situation. I didn't need to go to a class for that. I reached out to somebody I actually have a hard time watching, and I heard something new come from him, and I was able to adapt it and try it and put it into my practice, and now I'm learning it. So, and that's the last point, and then I'm going to end here. We're not going to talk about DAP right now. DAP, fail faster, it has been replaced with fail better, and then fail often. So that means keep trying things until you screw things up. In fact, sometimes once you get it working, see how you can break it. Find ways to break it and see what else you can do to the thing so you can see how well it works. I happen to one last little quick story, and I'll tell you of an example where this has really helped me. So this week, I was setting up. I've been moving all of my cloud native development onto the laptop. I've been doing it. I was too scared to do it on the development environment at work because I'm brand new at it. So I was doing it all on my own, and I was doing it with Kind on my own system. And today I've been putting it all on the laptop, and then I realized I was setting up my own experimental container And in the process, I discovered two things that have not been used on the team as far as I know so far. One of them was that I could use a container and it bypassed the bugs in the VPN problem with WSL2. I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I wonder if it'll do this. And it was a bunch of exploration. I said, hey, I wonder if I copy down the new login control script, which has been written to log into our login server. And I wonder what happened if I put that on my own computer. And so I did. I put it on my computer. I ran it. I ended up figuring out that I can connect to our core Kubernetes cluster from my laptop directly, and I don't have to mess with the login server that times me out after 5 minutes every day. And it was just through this process of experimentation and what if and failing and seeing if it would work or if it wouldn't fail that I was able to uncover this kind of key secret. I'm trying to share it with the team because this means that they can, use their local system for development. They don't have to log in to the login server, which is a pain in the butt because it's not updated. It doesn't have Docker because of security. It's got a bunch of other things. But if you can get around that whole thing by using this method, so that's just one example from my life this week where experimentation, following this process has really paid off. And reaching out, I've reached out to many of my individual team members and asked them, what is your process for doing your thing here? Here's my process. What do you think? And not hitting any one person too heavily with all of those questions. And so that's part of this, three-pronged approach, the read, write, execute kind of thing. So that's it. I'm going to take a break. How about, you guys have any comments on that? I should probably put a end marker there. Wait, we got some other things here. What do you say there? All right. So hopefully you guys will take some of those techniques that, it's not particularly groundbreaking thinking. This is, if anything, I think what I'm doing here is just sort of trying. This is something I really love to do, actually. It's part of what drives me. I like to take complicated or nebulous ideas and distill them and to get them into something that's digestible, because the scientific method is kind of out there. It's kind of scary. Who cares? Why do I care? And hopefully, just applying this process to yourself will give you the skills necessary to do your own learning. And then you don't ever have to depend on anybody. It's funny, after you start doing this, by the way, is when you start following this method, is anybody out there in the environment right now? Do you guys know what meritocracy is? Yeah. All right. So meritocracy has gotten a big black eye recently because it's been associated with racism. And I don't want to even talk about that. I think it's a bunch of BS. The term meritocracy means, and GitHub is pretty famous for making a big deal about this in Silicon Valley. I need to make my Pomo happy or go away, because otherwise I'll be ashamed. Pomo, stop. I'm not going to talk that long. Actually, no. Let's do Pomo. How about Pomo 10? Oops. 10. Oh man. There. All right, so I'm gonna do a quick video on meritocracy. I was supposed to take a break, but I want to talk about this. So related to the RWX method is this idea of meritocracy, and I'm going to repeat real quick that meritocracy is being associated with racism in Silicon Valley, and it has nothing to do with that. Meritocracy is, well, let's go search. What would you do if you were me right now? Okay, I'm not gonna tell you what it is. I want you to do your own research. So let's pretend like we're doing the research. What is meritocracy? Okay, spell it. Oh God, does that even get it? Oh my gosh. Okay. Meritocracy is a political system in which economic goods or political power are vested in individual people on the basis of talent, effort, achievement, rather than wealth and social class. Advancement in such a system is based on performance as measured through examination and demonstrated achievement. For each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Wow, where'd you get that, Tafatanes? That's great. That's fantastic. Excellent. Thanks for contributing that. So what do we have here? Understanding meritocracy. Meritocracy is a social system in which success and status in life depend primarily on individuals' Although some disagree about what qualifies as true merit, most now agree what merit should be. Oh, that's got kind of a teaser on it. I got to open it up. Basis people advance the basis of status and titles of family, blah blah blah. In the days of Aristotle, who coined the term ethos. This is nice. This is fun. See, we're kind of learning together here. I'm not, the idea of awarding positions of power to those most capable have been part of a political discussion, not only for governments but for business endeavors as well. Okay, we are talking about meritocracy at the moment. Is that Marx? Now, look. So ideas stand on their own, and we're gonna. A lot of the ideas that are gonna come out of this boost are gonna come from people that you're immediately gonna want to dismiss. And I need to make a different video about that. But ideas stand on their own, even if somebody who is responsible for genocide said it. And many of the things that Marx did say were, I think pretty sound. By the way, I'm getting kind of sidetracked, but if they're one of the geniuses of the modern world, one of the people that they cover is Marx. They cover Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud. And after you watch it, you'll have a totally different opinion of them. I know I did. Then I actually understood them a little bit better. It's very summarized. There's a documentary. There's a documentary on Netflix called "Geniuses of the Modern World," and it does Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud. I'm not commenting on their selection of the geniuses of them. Obviously, there's lots of other geniuses of the modern world, but it is a very, very good insight into these three minds that have really shaped us, and for better or worse, actually. So you might want to look at that. But meritocracy was. It's often been associated with that because the idea is that it flattens everybody down to what they can do. What are your skills? We don't look at anything else but your skills. But the word, when I use the word, I use it to mean that the people. So I'm going to do a quick story. So I've often been on a team. John Rawls on Meritocracy. I haven't read that one. That would be good. I'll have to do that. Thank you so much for contributing. So So this is how it goes. You're on a team. You got like 10, maybe 5-10 people on your team. And there's somebody who's designated as the team lead. And you have a project leader and you have a manager. And then you have 2 or 3 people on the team who are the actual leaders. They're the people who lead the team, that everyone that they go to for direction, that when there's a meeting, they don't have to say anything, but everybody just kind of waits to hear what they have to say. That's who you want to be. And if you follow this method, I'm not trying to sell you a ShamWow thing. My wife always tells me I'm the ShamWow guy all the time. She goes, you're doing the ShamWow thing again. I'm like, okay, fine. But if you follow the method of learning how to learn and repeating and exercising and creating your own things, by osmosis, you will become a team leader because you will have the knowledge and the skills that other people don't have. And it will become obvious. You don't have to show off to have it become obvious to the other people on your team. They will see that you have done the research on this answer and that you have it. And they might even think that it's magic. They may think, how does this person know all this stuff? Because the number one skill above every other skill that you have developed is how to learn, and specifically how to follow the scientific and the RWX methods to do that, to manage your own learning, because that will make you seem like a superstar right out of the gate. People will look at you and think, how on earth is he learning this stuff? Nurture argument, nature versus nurture. Yeah. Oh, I'd love to talk about that. I talk about Skinner versus. Yeah, we should talk about that some other time. So that's meritocracy. Meritocracy is the people that are leading because they clearly have the skills in the room. And it's not that they're the loudest, but their skills speak for themselves. Oftentimes people with meritocracy, with that kind of leadership, are often very soft-spoken. They usually won't talk a lot. They'll just get shit done. And they'll do it successfully. And the thing that's really sad about this, and I got to talk about this. I'm going to end on this point. So T.J. Holowaychuk famously said, and I think it's in my quotes list, T.J. who made Mean Stack and a bunch of other stuff. I wonder if I have my quotes. I got to go see if I can find them. Nope, I don't have them yet. I don't have them ported over yet. Give me a sec. I want to read the exact quote. It's going to take me a bit to find it. I'm in the middle of migrating a bunch of this over, and my quotes is one of the things that hasn't been migrated over yet. So, TJ. Let's see. Look at all those other quoters in here. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to find it the hard way. It's relatively recent. I'm gonna make a Zettelkasten for this so you guys can search it better. Right now it's um there it is. All right, so TJ Holowaychuk tweeted this once, and this is most succinctly says what I believe about meritocracy and about people knowing, not always talking about it or making Twitch streams. The level of technical content quality is inversely proportional to the prolificness of the author. This is why if it is so difficult and valuable to uncover those few who actually know what they're talking about, because they do it every day for hours a day, and they are willing to and able to write about it. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I wish this described me, but I don't think it does. I think that I could take it even up more of a notch. But the people who know don't write about it. Usually they don't. And it's too bad, because if they did, everybody else could benefit from it, but that would slow them down. Right. So I was just in a stream yesterday with RW Grime. He's the manager. He's the maintainer of the Pigeon Chat client. He's another Twitch streamer. Very, very, very nice guy. Really like him a lot. And we were talking about beginner stuff. And the first thing he said is, "Oh man, I wish I could do that beginner stuff. I just can't. I ain't got no time. I ain't got no time to do it." Because why? Because he's spending so much of his time every day. And you guys know I gripe about this all the time. And why I'm trying to integrate, working with helping others learn. Because if you can do the two at the same time, like Mr. Orologist does, another one of my favorite Twitch streamers, what does he do? He does his job and shares what he's doing while he's doing it with everybody, so he can do his job and share it and still be the best at what he does. Now that's the holy grail for me, actually. So when we talk about meritocracy, we have to we can't leave the topic without saying that the chances of you, the more colorful their icon, the more show they put on, the less chance they're going to have something valuable for you to hear. And that's TJ Holowaychuk saying it. One of the prolific technologists of our time. Some think he's not even real. They think he's a hive mind. Go search that. TJ Holowaychuk. Is TJ Holowaychuk a hive mind? There's a core question about this, because the guy has been so prolific in his life. He had to prove over and over again that he actually existed. They thought he was invented by some Silicon Valley firm and set as a figurehead, because he's been so prolific and made so much amazing stuff all by himself, all self-taught. Didn't even get venture capital funding for his Apex company. So when you find somebody like that, that's meritocracy, and there's nobody better than TJ Holowaychuk to represent meritocracy to me, because this guy is just like, he's constantly proving what he knows. I would not know Go if it hadn't been his blog that he did, Farewell to Node, in 2014. So meritocracy is a way to lead and direct and guide as a peer without necessarily getting the title that goes with it, because you spend the time learning in an efficient way, and you focus on learning above any specific skill, and then those skills come along with the learning when you're doing it. All right. So anybody, I'm sorry, I'm starting to sound a little high horsey there. I don't mean to. I cannot emphasize enough. Actually, there's all kinds of jokes about that. Yeah, there was a Node podcast. This is 2014, so don't be worried, it's still around. Yeah. Look, we're not going to rip on Node tonight. This is not about Node. If you like Node, that's fine. Node has got some value. Yeah, we're not going to talk about Node. I mean, if it does the job for people, that's fine. I don't want to talk about that. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We only have an hour left. So we talk about merit. Now we have two very important things to cover in the next hour. And these are very specifics. So I'm going to take a break. And if you want to get ready for the next stuff, these are probably some of the two most important topics I'm going to cover this week. We're going to cover how to manage knowledge, as efficiently as possible in a searchable way, using a method called Zettelkasten from Niklas Luhmann. If you want to go start reading about that, you can. We're going to talk about that in 5 minutes. And we're going to actually create it. Remember I told you for your homework, you need to have GitHub set up? All right. In between Node and Rust. No, so disagree with that, but that's okay. Meritocracy, we already covered that. So we're going to cover Zilla Castle. So what you need right now, everybody, before this next 5 minutes starts, you need to have a GitHub account set up. You should log into it, and you should go in there and get ready to start creating a new repo for yourself. Okay, we're going to use the graphic interface for all of this. We're not going to use anything. We're not going to use Git. We're not going to use anything on the command line. No command line stuff today. Okay, we're going to get to that. We're going to do nothing but graphic GitHub. But for the next half hour, we're going to be doing nothing but graphic GitHub. So please make sure you have a GitHub account right now. Okay. The next thing we're going to do after that is I'm going to teach you Markdown in 20 minutes. I'm not going to teach it to you. I don't like teaching. You're going to learn Markdown. I'm going to show you where to go to learn it and the minimums you need to learn on Markdown. This is super important, people. People learn too much Markdown all the time, and it inhibits them from doing anything useful with it. So I'm going to teach you the minimum Markdown to be common with everything else that I've come about through lots of trial and error, lots of method, experimental method, and then we'll go for that. Okay, all of this stuff will be in the highlights and in the videos. Yes, in fact, we're going to publish a YouTube video of the entire VOD, and then I'm going to pull out the highlights on the weekend. So you guys can come back and watch it, and everything will be marked. I do need to take 5 minutes break, and I'm going to estimate right now that we are going to go 5 minutes over 9. So if you have anything to do at 9 o'clock, and you need to push back, we're probably going to be 5 or 10 minutes over tonight. But I do need to get up and walk around. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. All right. So quick little break there. So we're going to cover. I really, this is going to, I'm kind of struggling here because this is going to be hard to cover. So we're about to cover something that's very, very hard to cover quickly. So I'm going to start my Pomo method because I swear I got to keep on it. Duration 25 minutes, of course. And then we're going to say Zettelkasten. And I know that's a Z, you can't really tell. Okay, so just to give you the quick overview, Zettelkasten, let's do it the way you would do it. What is Zettelkasten? And you're going to get Zettelkasten.io, which is the first hit, and it sucks. So it says here, Zettelkasten is a method of note-taking and personal knowledge management used in research and study. But not just in research and study. You can use this to make yourself a superhero when it comes to learning, because this is the fastest way for you to store your knowledge. This is your file system. This is your physical file system that lives outside of your brain, so that when you have an idea or you need to create a new file, you can just create that file, and then you can associate that file through linking to other files. And in many ways, it's consistent with what the idea of the World Wide Web, even though the World Wide Web has failed in several other ways. That does remind me I have to go get something. All right. So that's my object lesson there. We're going to go ahead and get into Zettelkasten. Now, as we go into the Zettelkasten thing, I just have to tell, we're going to get into the technique, but I really want to give you a big caution here, because I lost about 8 hours one day doing this research. And, I don't think it's cheating to tell you to help guide your research in a way that hopefully will help you arrive at more informed conclusions more quickly. I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to have to sift through a bunch of BS. There has been so much BS about the Zettelkasten method put out there, including Zettelkasten.io, which is the #1 site, that it is completely and totally washed out the original idea and the cognitive value of the entire Zettelkasten method. So the first warning I'm going to give you as we go into this is, if you're going to research it on your own, make sure you start with the research by reading Luhmann's own words. Okay, so who was Niklas Luhmann? This one will actually pull up in a graphic browser since we need one. So here we go. This tells you the Zettelkasten method. There's a physical Zettelkasten. Where is he? Luhmann, here he is. What? No. I know there's a better picture of him. I know there is. That's what I get for doing this. Let's go see if we can find one. Well, let's just go. Niklaus Zettel. He was actually alive until relatively recently, I understand. I don't know exactly right now. Okay, so they have all of these different Zettelkasten things that you have to pay for, you have to buy, free downloads, and all these different opinions about what you should do to use it, which one you should use. There's a book that says taking intelligent notes and smart notes, and there's a bunch of stuff out there, and none of it is actually what he said. A lot of it is built on the idea, and the first critique I have of all the stuff that's out there is almost all of it dismisses the cognitive value of actually following the process. They say, well, we've done this and such using a computer to save you all the hassle, and we've done the tagging automatically. We have AI to automatically do the tags in the register for you and everything, and we're going to get into what those mean. And so basically, they've said the computer is going to help you do this all, and it's taken all the trouble out of it for you. But the problem is that every one of these approaches is dismissing the cognitive value of doing the register, of reading through your content, organizing it, revisiting your content regularly so that you can have this kind of built-in process of reviewing your thoughts and stuff and refreshing them in your mind and deciding which of the stuff that's in there needs to be thrown out and combined with something else and all of that. If you're doing it through a computer that's got some really crazy AI or some tagging system, there's actually a PhD in Germany who did a presentation that you'll find along the way if you do the research on this, who actually stamps out in a presentation not what Lumen did, because he attacks all these people that are making different ideas. So that's, as we go into it, that's the caveat. Now, what did he actually do? So Zettelkasten stands for, I'm going to read his own words to you. So the best resource I've found so far is, strangely enough, lumen.surge.sh, and I'll put that in the chat here. If somebody else already have it, you could put it in there if you wanted. So there you go. This is on a free site, so it can't be taken down or anything. And this has Lumen's translated works by themselves. And so remember we talked about learning how to read, by the way. So Lumen was obsessed with having the most efficient systems possible. I mean, that was his whole thing. In fact, one of his greatest claims to fame is they told him if he could finish some sort of, I can't think it was a dissertation or not a dissertation, it was a project within a year, that he could get a position in a college, I believe it was. I don't tell the story. I should probably tell it better. And nobody thought he could do it in that time, and he did it. And he did it because he developed a method to organize his thoughts as best as possible. So communicating with slip boxes. Communicating with slip boxes is an empirical account. This is not too long of a read. All right. It's just a paper. This paper was probably built using the Zettelkasten method. Why do you care about this dude? Right. Well, that's why I'm trying to find a picture of him. He's kind of fun to look at. I think he was Dutch. Niklaus Luhmann. And if you guys have your own research and you find some stuff you want to share, please feel free to put it in the chat. Here's him talking. I mean, again, he's been around for a while. We're not going to watch this right now. You can go look at him. But he's just such a great dude. I love him. And he's been teaching this method quietly, and he's kind of he's passed on now, and he's getting all famous now because everybody's using his method. And there's actually an archive in one of the universities that has his actual Zettelkasten boxes, and you can see them, and it's absolutely amazing if you get a chance to see it. That's not it. Is this it? No, that's the open source version of it. Productivity tool. There's all these different takes on it, and you can read them too. But what I really want you to do is read his words first. Please read his words first. And there's all kinds of videos on it. I'm trying to find the German one. There's actually, did anybody find it? So here's his boxes. Let me see if there's a good one. So this is his original boxes, right? And so Zettel means slip, and box, or Kasten means a single box. If it had an umlaut, it's plural. So there was his thing. There's a number of things that were really important to him that are totally lost in translation by everybody else. One of them was that he wanted his system to be all within arm's length. So he would set up his Zettelkasten system on a table like mine, and he made absolutely sure that every single box was within arm reach of him, so that he would have, what he would do is he would pull out all of his little Zels, and we'll talk about how he organizes these slips of paper with little notes on them. And what he would do is he would pull them all together. Some of you may have used this method in some form for research papers. They used to teach this, and it's not index cards, by the way. And I'm going to get to that. So, and he would put them all on a piece of paper, put out in front of him, and then he would just think, and he would take his ideas. If he had an idea, just like a rough idea, he would keep the paper around with him. By the way, the size of paper, if you notice this size of paper, the size of paper is not. It's a little bit bigger than an index card, and it's paper. And so I've been using this is an artist book, and I split these in half, and I use about half of a page for each one, and I keep it on paper as well. So going into this, when I was building up my method of doing Zettelkasten, the number one criteria I had is I want to be able to implement this entire system on paper. I do not want to be dependent on a computer, because I want to be, and I do I regularly take this everywhere with me. I take it anywhere that I don't have computer access, including the restroom or, in the bathtub. I'll be like taking notes and stuff. I think that any system at all should be able to accommodate paper in your system. And we're going to get to the specifics of how all of this applies to use of the system. It's not the Dewey Decimal System or any of those things. So back to Luhmann's words. How much time we got on my pomo? 15. Okay. So you can read the whole thing here. He actually goes into great detail about why to use paper instead of a card, because he needed he had 90,000 of these things, and he was able to produce over 70 books in his lifetime after the age of 30. And he went on to do many other amazing things, including publishing 2 books after he died. People went through his Zettelkasten and he had manuscripts ready because he was creating a register and he was getting ready to do that. And then he ended up publishing manuscript, all kinds of stuff. So here's the basic idea. The basic idea is that when you have a thought, you just write it down. You write a thought down, and you don't think about it. You don't think about, it's called a fleeting zettel. A zettel is a slip, so it's called a fleeting zettel. A zettel is just, I have a thought, all right? And you can give it a title. I suggest you give it a title. He gave most of his titles if you look at them. But you just have the thought, right? And the thoughts happen all during the day, so you make sure you have a notebook with you next to the bed table, so when you wake up after that dream, you can write that thought down. At the breakfast table, whatever. You just have some place to capture those thoughts so you don't lose them. And when you want everything out of the way when you're going to do that. So if you have a thought, and you'll see me at work, turn the fish off for a bit, and I'll have a little thought, and I'll just jot it down really quickly, very roughly, because it's just a fleeting zettel. It's meant to just capture the thought and not let it get lost. And the reason GitHub comes into play is because it makes it searchable, and we're going to get back to that in a bit. So that's the fundamental premise of it. Now, every single one of your zettels has to have a unique identifier. And the unique identifier that Luhmann used was actually kind of an involved number system. See this? He has a little number here. And you got to remember, this is one case where he was working with paper, where we can actually benefit from something a little bit more verbose than that. This is the title he has on that. And in my opinion, the best possible, there's a lot of discussion about the unique identifiers, and most of the software that is out there has this big, long, stupidly complicated universal unique identifier, and it makes it impossible for you to use any kind of paper system. So every single zettel needs to have a unique identifier. Now, sometimes I'm sloppy and I don't necessarily put my unique identifier on here because I don't have my watch with me or something. But my unique identifier, and this is actually one of the suggestions for many of the people out there who want to keep a low tech focus, is to just use what I call an isosecond or an isosec. An isosecond is the current date and second in Zulu time, GMT, down to the second. This is guaranteed. This is a number that's guaranteed to be unique, that you can determine with a digital watch or a phone or something like that without having too much technology involved, right? And you don't have to, or did you decide on that? Nice to hear that. You don't have to use that, but, and by the way, it's important you put it in GMT, because if you don't put it in GMT, your unique identifiers will not be unique anymore, right? Because the times will change. So it's really important that you use GMT. This has the positive side effect of also sorting very well. So as you can see in my GitHub, if I can find it, in my GitHub stuff, the zettels that were first are always at the top. And it's really important that you don't ever attribute significance to any unique identifier. This is actually a really big architectural design principle anti-pattern, is for people, when people put meta information in the unique identifiers that people use as information about the information. It's actually really, really bad to do that. So in general, you should never put your unique identifiers should just be unique, and they should not be associated. And metadata should be someplace else or within the data itself at the top or something. But in this particular case, we get the side effect of sorting really well. So when I keep saying this is a file system for your brain, this is exactly how the computer file system works on your computer. It has a unique identifier for each inode in a Linux system, and that goes into a file system table, which has an index. And that index keeps track of where all the files are, and you can sort them and display them however you want. You can symbolically link back and forth to different things. And all of that applies to this method of managing your knowledge. So the core of my approach is pretty simple. It just boils down to making one directory with a readme.md file for each Zettelkasten, each Zettel slip. And I have a command that does that. You guys can go look at it if you want. So here's my zet command. I have a lot more to work on it. If you want to follow that, there's several other things that I need to add to mine, but if you have more than one idea per second. So the other really great thing about GitHub is if you start to make these directories like this, you get free searchability without needing Google or anything like that. You are dependent on GitHub, but you can go up here and say, so let's go to my other Zet. I can come up here to my Zet here, and I can say I want to see everything about Zettelkasten. Zettelkasten. Okay, so I can search my whole repository and get every single hit for Zettelkasten in the whole thing. I bet Lumen would have died to have that, because this is not impacting the cognitive approach and value at all. This is just helping him find all the occurrences for this. And this brings me to the next part of Zettelkasten. And this is a part that I actually think has less value now, but is fundamentally important at the end. So I think the most important part of Zettelkasten is the granularity of the ideas. And so let's talk about that before I talk about the register. So the register is just a place where he put everything. So he had a register, and that was like one massive piece of paper that had every single entry to Zettelkasten, and then they would tie to each other in sort of a mental map sort of way. If you were able to draw this out, a lot of the software that does mind mapping and stuff like that follows the Zettelkasten method. It's just the Zettelkasten method happened to do it on paper first without any fancy ways to diagram how everything's interlinked and all that stuff. And so in each one of these Zettels, you can see what he does is he puts, see if I can find one again. He puts he potentially puts links in here to other things, and he'll put the unique identifier. He created his own unique naming scheme that also allowed him to put his pieces of paper roughly in the same area next to other pieces of paper that were related. So so he sort of had some meaning in his unique identifiers, kind of like we sort of have meaning in terms of chronological date for ours. And that was only because of the practicality of putting all these pieces of paper that he kept for years in the same place and knowing where to go to get them. And so what he would do is he would have all the paper out, and then he would, as he was going through deciding what to write, so he would look at it all and then pull out the Zettels that were related to that topic and then get those out when he was working on a project. And then ultimately the project would turn into a book or an article or something like that. So let's return back to the easy first process. So a Zettel is just a piece of paper that's about half a page long. You can see the size here. And it has a title, optional title. It has, and I've chosen to keep it under 50 characters because, as you can see, if you keep it under 50 characters, you automatically get the benefit. I kind of cheated on mine, and normally a commit message should not be a title, just so you know. It's a violation of Git, best practices. But in my case, I figured giving them the same commit message every time gave me the advantage of having titles in GitHub. I don't need to have a website. I don't need to have anything. I can build a website from this like that anytime I want to, but I have, and it's a very big directory. It's going to get really big. And I know for a fact that it will eventually stop showing you all the files in there after you get over 800. I learned that with the Kubernetes API, by the way. And so we're fine there. I mean, you can store up to like 30,000 or more. I think it's an infinite number now of files within a single directory. So you can put all those in there. And then in each one, you can have them. So now I've chosen to link between things using this method. And I have my own technique. I have been using, rather than linking directly to other Zettels, which is fine because they're not going to change, right? Unlike web pages, I think I wrote a blog, a Zettel about this, about how I think HTML is a bad idea, HTML outbound linking, because everything breaks. But if you link to the search in the Zettelkasten for that topic, you'll get all the new stuff and old stuff if it moves around. And if you needed to link directly to a thing, if you're following the Zettelkasten method, the possibility of that uniquely identified thing going away is very low, because it doesn't need to go away. It can still stay there, and you can build stuff up around it. So during the day, you're writing down your Zettels, you're writing things down. I actually use Markdown as my writing. Basic Markdown can be used in written form as well. And so my links, when I do the Zettels, I just make, brackets, and I put my number in there, and I put another bracket. And so when he did this, he would actually put, sometimes he would randomly put a tag, he called a label, into something else, and he would put one that tied the other one. He had a thing called serieses, which is when he ran out of, this is another thing I'm kind of cheating on. How long do you make your Zettels, right? Well, there's cognitive value in limiting yourself to about 25 lines. And one of the reasons I like this is because it plays really nice with my 80 character monitor. If I have something that's going wrong with my Zettel and it gets too long, first of all, it's okay to do that, but I try to keep it to 25 lines. And the reason for that is because the cognitive pressure on you to fit the idea into one visible page on a terminal is good, because that forces you to keep it granular. That means your main point, there should be a main point in that Zettel. If you need to make that point over more than that, that's fine, but consider breaking those up into different Zettels. Why? Because later, when it comes time to compose them all back together, this is the extreme value of the Zettelkasten method. Say Zettelkasten. I don't know how to say it right. Zettelkasten. Hans Zimmer. I don't know. If I'm researching, yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you should. So the Zettelkasten method, and again, the focus of the boost, the purpose of the boost is to get you enough information to go learn about it and find your own way. I've told you the caveats. I've told you the method that I use. I don't maintain a really serious register, but for me, my register comes in the form of, the register is where you tie everything back together. And the closest example, I've only been following this method I've tried several different methods over the years. And I've only been following this specific method for about a month using the new, and I'm moving all my data back into it. And so far, I just cannot tell you how pleased I am, because I can find everything. So I have like Zettels for a log. I have Zettels for a Zettelkasten for my wish list. And maybe that would all be in one Zettelkasten, and if Lumen was doing it, because he only had one set of boxes. But we can kind of do that with what I call a ZK repo. And I'm going to coin that term right now. A ZK repo is a repo that's set up to have this method in it. So let me show you the boost one. So the boost one is the best example I have of one that's got a register. So a register is the one page that pulls everything together. And in this particular case, I'm actually using some, hyperlinking and things like that, whereas he would be doing it on paper, and he would have the entry point number for that thing in the piece of paper. And so my take on this, which I think is just one step up from doing it on paper, is to just do them all, make little, ZK directories, Zettel, I call them Zets. Just make a Zet for it, and then put your idea. And then you can always delete that Zet. You can repurpose that Zet. You can combine that Zet in a different way. I don't know if you guys have seen me. I've reorganized my boost several times, and I don't have to reorganize the content because the top level can be reorganized. And if you use any sort of mind mapping, research paper, helper software, that's what that does. It helps you, rearrange your thoughts. There's a thing called, oh God, what was it called? Oh, I can't remember. The Inspiration. There was a Mac program in college called Inspiration, and I love that thing because what it happened is it allowed me, when you're doing Zettels, it allows you to do very organic things. So the process goes like this. You'll be writing about a topic, right? And you'll get to a point where you'll have another thought about something else. And so you break out a bubble, and in this case, I fire up another Tmux window and I start another Zet on that idea. And then I write in that idea. And then it triggers off another path of ideas. It's very consistent with the neurology going on. And then I want to write this one. So I write about that idea. And so what ends up happening is I get these Tmux windows that build up on each other. And the Tmux window on the end is the one, and I'm like, okay, I close out that idea, and then I close that window, and I'm like, oh, and then I go back to the one, and I go, oh, that's what triggered that idea, and then I can flesh out that one, and I can flesh out that one, and flesh out that one. Sometimes I'll have a branch, and I'll have one that branches down here and up here, and then I'll deal with those two branches. And so I'm using these different tmux windows as if I were composing different bubbles in sort of in like one of the more traditional mind mapping software. I like the mind mapping software because it gives you the visual, but I don't like it because it's so hard to edit the stuff in there. So I can't tell you how freeing this is, because that's how I think and do things. I immediately am like, oh my God, that reminds me of this other thing. And that reminds me of this other thing. And I don't have to feel any regret anymore about allowing my brain, the creative process to just happen. That's what happens. Your brain, the neurology of your brain does that thing. So it's like sending you down all these different creative paths, and you can capture those ideas as they're happening, and they're like triggering other ideas, as long as you come back and reel the whole thing in before you end up committing all of these things. And now you have all of these independent zettles that may or may not be interlinked with each other, but that are all available for you to come back later. And that's an important part of the process. So we talked about fleeting zettles. You'll see YouTubers talk about that. Fleeting zettel is just an idea that comes down really fast. And then the idea is that you come back later, either the same day or the same week, and you go through all the zettles you made that week, and you're like, well, really, this zettel already exists over here. I'm going to combine that content, rip this one up, and put it into the other one. And now I'm going to take this content over here, and you're looking at your register, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, so this goes over here. Oh my gosh, I repeated myself 3 times about this very topic, because it's going to happen. You're going to have the same idea 10 times, and you're going to be like, well, why didn't I have it? But other than having, now, the Lumen was restricted to looking at his register to see if he'd already covered a topic. We're not limited in that regard. And I still think looking over your register to see if you covered the topic is powerful. And this is one case where it's a little bit gray area whether you're going to lose a cognitive value by doing it. But by going out into your database here, and just being able to, like, if you're going through the recent zettles for the month or the week or something, it tells you how old they are over here. You can like go through them, and when you go through each one, you could like search for the keywords on it, and you can kind of use GitHub and like interactively kind of look through your whole zettel very easily as a GitHub repo, whether you want to do it from the terminal or you want to do it graphically. And you can kind of see where you might have some overlap, and you can tweak it and fix it, and it's all composable, because every time you make a change or anything, you're not particularly breaking any links anywhere. You shouldn't be anyway. If you're hard linking directly to other zettels, you might want to think about hard linking instead to a search of the registry for that topic. And in the register, he had actual titles and labels, and that's the stuff that he put in there. So I think we're close to the end of my time. I just want to leave. We are over. I do, before you leave this topic though, I want to leave on the most important thing. Please promise me that you will read his words before you do anything else in your research on this topic. And I've covered it very briefly. Before you do anything else in your research, read Lumen's own words. And it's this Lumen, LUHMANN.surge.sh, and click on, I suggest both of his papers. These are written, they're very short by academic standards. And he talks about an empirical account of communicating with slipboxes and how it's helped him and changed him. He even talks about the importance of using paper over index cards, which is completely lost on the YouTube community. I swear to God, none of those people who did a YouTube video on this even read what he said. And it kind of bothers me, because the guy revolutionized knowledge management, and somebody just says, TLDR, YouTube video. No, read it. Don't take the shortcut. Read the whole thing, and you'll understand it. I may have missed some particular things here. He talks about the possibility of arbitrary internal branching. All of this is part of this whole mind mapping idea of having a graph structure. And if you know what I'm talking about in computer science and data structures and stuff, it's the graph. It's all about the graph structure, right? And that's what allows this to happen. It's not the World Wide Web. It's actually better than that, because it's more of a mind map for yourself to make your own associations. You can compose that together. And then when it comes time to make a paper or something, you just do the searches through there, find out how all the things link together, and then you can even create relatively simple software and shell scripts to pull out all of your zettels in order, and then you just flesh in the prose and connect everything up and make your chapters. You have a book. So, this is after, a year or so given on a specific topic, you'll have so many zettels created for that particular topic that you'll be able to be very productive, and as productive as Lumen. So you're going to bring your own take on this. You're welcome to use the take that I have. I really encourage you to come up with your own take on it. And there's been several people that have been streaming. That have been with me going through this. There's actually a bunch of people that have been. My Zet script is very incomplete. I've got an open issue on this. Some stuff that's coming. Here's my issues on it. So I have an open issue on my Zet command. If you want to read it, it's going to tell what I'm going to do with it. I don't have it done yet, but so I want to read the body. So yeah, so this is what my Zet command is going to have in it. Language barrier, yeah. List Zet, list ls, cd, edit, isosec, filter less. These are just basic commands that right now I can get away with doing it entirely from GitHub. And the stuff that we've talked about in GitHub, let's do one last thing with that. Let's actually make an entry using nothing but GitHub, okay? Just to show you how to use GitHub if you've never seen it before. So here we have the boost, right? So a lot of people don't know this, but you can edit everything in your repo without ever using the command line. So you can start using this method with GitHub today. First things first, make a repo. So I'm actually going to do that really quick. And this should take me 5 minutes tops. So we're going to do a new repository, and I'm going to say, we'll call it sample Zet. I called mine Zet. I hope it becomes a trend. I've actually started calling the way that I do streaming Zettelcasting, because I like to cut my videos up in small composable pieces that can be brought together later. And the identifiers are the same, so I can just link to them in a Zettelcast written entry. So here we have a sample Zet, and you could just say whatever, create repo. This is going to take, you can make it public or private. There's nothing in it. And so you can say, well, let's add something. Let's create a new file. Okay, so let's create readme.md, which is the standard name. And we can say my Zettelkasten. I know it's like hard to read, but scroll down here and click on commit. That's basically save. And now I have a Zettelkasten. Okay, if I want to add a new entry, and this is a little bit harder without having a watch or something. But we're gonna make a new one. So let me expand this a little bit. I think I've messed up. Okay, here we go. So go to file, add file. So we want to create a new file. It says file, but it actually means directory. So here you can actually put the date, and this is where I'm going to cheat. I might have to copy and paste another one, but I could do this. So I have isosec. And that is leaning on technology a little bit. Again, I could do that with a watch if I needed to. But, it would be nice to have a little tool to help you with that. And then inside of that, I can say /readme.md. And now I can create a new file. And I can say Lumen methods, something here, and I'm going to copy the title, because I want my titles to be good for the messages. And I'm going to put that as my commit message. Oops. And I'm going to right click and do paste. And then I can save that. And there you go. I've got a note. And, if any, Lumen's methods, right? If anything, this is better than Google or Dropbox or Google, Docs or anything like that. Why? Because it allows you to take notes freely in a way that's searchable very powerfully through the search interface. It allows other people to discover some of your thoughts and ideas if you want. If you don't, you can make it private. And it's all versioned, which means that if you need to go back to a version, let's say you delete one or you change one in a way that you want to restore, Google Docs has some level of that doesn't even touch this, because this is dealing with knowledge as source. And we're going to talk about that in the next Markdown. When we talk about in the Markdown video, we're going to talk a lot about knowledge as source and how you store it, and why GitHub is the best platform for storing and managing your knowledge source, as well as your source code for other projects. All right. Take a little break, and we're going to do the Markdown one. I know we're going to go over tonight, but I think it's gonna be okay. So I didn't read any of the comments because I went way over. I'm gonna put a 5-minute break on this guy. I do want to read what you guys had to say, though. Read what you guys had to say here. Golang, thanks. I can't say it right. Jets. I know how to do it because I speak Russian. I just can't do it at that place. Zettelkasten. In a hard German language. Zettelkasten. It sounds very similar to what you can do with Obsidian. Obsidian, I've heard people talk about Obsidian a lot. I don't know. I haven't used it. And maybe if that works for you, fine. The bottom line is use a composable method for knowledge management that you can adapt to your own needs. This happens to be the one that works for me. If you don't want the term, I refuse to use any software that does not allow me to take my piece of paper and scan it in. Because I want it to be able to be done on paper. I don't want to have a different process for paper than from what I'm doing online. That's really important to me. Maybe not to some other people. Artist formerly known as REXX, Funk Main. And what else we got? Let's see. This method looks so useful. Yes, it is. I love it. Any new joins the community? If you're out there, let me know. I'll be giving out a gift sub to celebrate my nickname. From the graph POV point of view, multiple Zets have a mentioned connection to a topic. For instance, rather than linking to the Zets directly. Yes. And yeah, I think you can do both of those, Dustbinder. And really that depends on you. The automatic tagging of Zettles, though. So the biggest caution I have with regard to that is tags. So we live in a tagged world where everything has to be tagged, and I've read arguments that say that tagging really isn't the way to go. And the categorization. If you start, as soon as you add in category layers and tagging and stuff like that, you're starting to move away from the composability of the whole thing. And, the content represents itself. It doesn't need an extra tag. In YouTube, they tell you about this when you're making YouTube videos. The description should represent what's in the description. It shouldn't need an extra tag that tells you what it's actually about. That said, I do link directly to Zettles, but in general, I link to the registry, or I go to the registry and have the registry link into the Zettles. But I'm not opposed. They actually talk about this. So he did call them tags, and occasionally his Zettle would directly link to another Zettle, and it would have it by number on there. And he had another thing that I didn't even talk about, where he would have an idea that spanned multiple Zettles, and he would have to put it on each one. And so he would do what was called a sequential Zettle, and he would have this one linked to the next one and linked to the next one. But he forced himself to keep them still on these slips of paper, to force himself to say, okay, do I really need 10 of these in a sequence, or are these actually independent ideas that just happen to be being put in this way? I just can't emphasize enough how beneficial I find limiting yourself to about 25 lines. This is not an article or a blog post, right? To limit yourself to about 25, 30, 40 lines, because it forces you to put structure around your idea. I've gone into a Zettle before and made one title for it, and then ended up writing about a completely different thing and changing the title, and realizing I had another Zettle I needed to do because it's this whole idea of a lot of the Zettles are just one paragraph, and the title is just kind of like a what do they call it, the primary sentence of a paragraph. It's just that sort of thing punched. So just be careful when you start getting into the tagging thing that you just don't start depending on that or creating potential for broken links and stuff. In a true system, you should be able to delete a Zettle and not have it break everything. In my particular case, I don't know how much I'm going to be deleting Zettles. I'll probably be keeping it around and just not linking to it anymore, but leaving it around. And then eventually anything that's not linked from the register or from something else, I'm going to create a report and say, okay, this is another thing too. I'm going to create, I'm also eventually going to make this is something I've really been wanting to do. Is I want to make something that tells me an expiration report. So exactly, it's like memory and garbage collection. Exactly. I want to create a way to do exactly cognitive garbage collection and expiration. So if there's ideas in my Zettelkasten that are files that are not getting used anymore, I want to be able to do a search of all my Zettels and say, okay, when was this created? And I want to set expirations so that any Zettel that hasn't been modified or updated or used or linked within the last X amount of days, I want it to go into a report to me so that I can revisit that knowledge and remember it again and decide, oh my God, yes, this is important. Why would I have this linked here? Or I can say, no, that's an old idea. Over the years, I've got probably 1,200 or so of these little readmes floating around, and most of them are defunct. There are ideas that I've changed my mind on, that I've gone away with. The really great thing about the Zettelkasten is that you can change your ideas and delete things and have a historical record of your change in knowledge and opinion over time. How powerful is that? Think about that for a second. You actually have a history of the evolution of your thought process. You can see that you used to be for GitHub and GitLab or whatever, and you can see when you made the change and how you made the change. And if you're creating some sort of auditing system of expiration that's reporting to you, possible Zettels that need to be garbage collected, then you can constantly keep that knowledge alive. And now layer on top of that. No, I don't need to. This is all Zettelkasten stuff. Now, layer on top of all of that, layer onto the top of all of that, the idea that you can now share this with anyone. And we haven't talked about that yet, but you can add an RSS feed for any commit. So you can follow my commits in my Zettelkasten, and I can follow yours. And anytime you commit to your Zettelkasten, I will get a pop-up notifier saying that you wrote this ZooZettel. You just had this thought. And if you put a title on the thought, I can just see it's way better than a Twitter feed, because I can go there. And by the way, if I want to contribute any information to that thing, I can open an issue in GitHub on that particular topic. And so I can actually tell, it's good to come to you again. It's like a natural filter. Because yes, I agree. You shouldn't think. What I want to do with the whole forgetting of the idea is I want to be able to know that I forgot the idea and to be able to actively say this isn't a part of my thinking currently, and so I can change that so that my Zettelkasten is a representation of my current thinking on a topic at any moment. So as I evolve my thinking, it's going to be that position. And that is the single thing that I have struggled with the most of everything. I make a website, and as soon as I make the website, within 2 months, the thing is defunct because everything has changed. The technology's changed, my position's changed, the industry's changed. And so, yeah, it's note-taking distilled in a way that gets out of the way and lets you have a cognitive process around that. And then it helps you out and beyond that. All right, so we're going to do a video on Markdown right now. And this is going to be a very fast video, probably not even the full 20 minutes, because it's pretty much just you need... I've started applying Zettelkasten. Many of the techniques, so this is ironic, many of the techniques of Zettelkasten I was already using. I invented a thing called the Knowledge Exchange Grid and KN and README World and the Essential Web. All of this work I've been doing over the last 5-8 years, trying to get my head around how to manage knowledge better. Ultimately, somebody suggested to me a year and a half ago that I look at Zettelkasten, and I was like, not really interested. I didn't know what I'd do with it. And then the more I got researching it this year, I realized that it actually hit almost every base that I wanted to for the Knowledge Exchange Grid, and that the only thing we have to add to that is the ability to share and the ability to decentralize, which GitHub, believe it or not, does give you. Any one of these Git repos could be saved as a tarball or as a zip file and exchanged and stored on disk or something and sent to somebody. So I'm not opposed to using GitHub for hosting. It doesn't hurt that by having GitHub, I'm also being discovered by other people who might be searching, and also. That's what I'm using for the ISOSEC. GitHub, that's not directly computing related. I keep one. I have a Zettel that I have a log that it has a lot of other things in there as well. Yeah, I personally think all of that can go into my Zettel, but if you want to categorize different Zettels, I have a to-do Zettel, a log set, I have the boost one, and I do have interlinking between my Zetels. Another thing I really like about GitHub is that the links are always consistent, so I can script them. I can script I can script link transformation if I ever needed to take out that thing and make it a website. During generation, I can automatically translate every single link into a link that would work as a website, or as a file system link, because it's the same all the time, even if it's another Zettelkasten repo. So I can share with GitHub. I have a revision history in GitHub, and not only that, my knowledge is also stored in the Arctic vault forever. You guys know about this? You guys know this is super cool. So like if you're around, you get contributed to several repos in the 2020 GitHub archive program. So every year they have an archive. They archive everything on GitHub and they store it in a vault in the Arctic, which is the most protected place on Earth. So if you want your thoughts and ideas to represent humanity in the next age, this is the modern archive. You could actually put them in GitHub. I didn't even think about that till last week. I was like, oh my God, that's like another reason to do it. I mean, yes, Microsoft owns GitHub. It's centralized, but it's still Git. So you can still duplicate this effort, using QR codes on film. Yeah, right. And they're going to do that more. So just imagine that. Imagine that your stuff is now stored forever as a representation. And my mom was a big historian for the Mormons. She was big into Mormon pioneer histories and stuff. And I cannot think of something that's more, true to her wishes growing up to archive the things of the past for those of the future so they can read about them. And I've just been trying to manage how to share my knowledge with others and how to keep track of stuff in a searchable way. GitHub brought something to the table that I can search this either through Git. I can just do git grep and search my entire thing through Git, which gives me all the keywords I want. If it's not my register, I can go to GitHub and I can send people a link, which will link all of it together. And every single one of my YouTube videos has a Zettelkasten ISOSEC in it, so I can link my YouTube videos from the Zettelkasten archive as well. So my YouTube videos are automatically being added, and I'm actually adding another script that's going to take the Zettelkasten text and automatically set that as the description for the video. So I will have videos that are also Zettelkasten video versions of the same thing, and all of that will be just searchable. So the thing that's cool about that is I've got hundreds of videos out there now, so I'll be able to just not depend on YouTube for searching, but I can also search through my Zettelkasten and I can pull up a thing and go, oh, I made a video about that. I can click on the link and see the video for that, and decide whether I want to keep that video around or not. So it's really been, as I said, this exploration of different ideas and stuff, and it's kind of been coming together over time. And I can't tell you how excited I am, because I finally feel like I have something reliable to put all of this content that I've generated over the years into, and be able to reliably know that it's still going to be there for myself or anyone else. This is why I don't do it as a web page anymore, because it's just GitHub, right? It's not going away. I'm not going to delete my account. And then I can also go search it, and I can send searchability to other people. And that was the big thing I was missing before. I couldn't find anything, and now I feel I can find stuff again. Thank God. So I don't know how. It's only going to take 10 minutes for this next thing. So let's go ahead and make a video on that. Let's do Markdown. Yeah, I know. We'll see, right? Oh, yeah, ask me again in a year. That's very fair, Sir John. That's very fair. Very fair. But I feel comforted in the fact that another great thinker, managed this on paper, and I'm just doing the same thing. So, learn basic Markdown. Okay, so I'm gonna mark a video really here, and I'm gonna zip through this. This is gonna be 10 or 15 minutes at the top. In fact, I'm going to force myself with a Pomo to be only 15 minutes long. Pomo duration, 15 minutes. All right, there we go. So I promised myself I was only going to do this video in 15 minutes, since I spent so much time blabbing on about Zettelkasten. But when you start writing the first question everybody has was, well, how do I write in a consistent way? And I'm just going to cut to the chase. You can challenge me on this conclusion. Normally, I don't like to start with conclusions. I tell people, don't start with conclusions, because it starts fights, right? You tell people things like Microsoft sucks, and that's a conclusion. They get mad at you. But you tell them why you think that, and they're like, oh, okay. So I disagree with starting with conclusions. But in this case, for the sake of learning, for your learning and time, I'm just going to start with a conclusion. Markdown, specifically Pandoc Markdown, is hands down the universal knowledge source syntax. That means it is the syntax, the language that you need to learn to write in order to capture your knowledge. And what do I mean by that? So you hear me say this all the time, knowledge as source. When we write words in a book or something like that, we're writing source code. In a crazy way, when we're writing tutorials and stuff, we're literally writing, or procedures, we're writing programming for humans. In fact, there's so many parallels between knowledge management, we just talked about a bunch with Zettelkasten and file systems and memory garbage collection and all this stuff, to the actual real physical world with we humans in it. When it comes to knowledge management, we can benefit immensely by looking at what the software world has already figured out. And one of those things is source management. So we have ideas, they change over time. We have different versions of them. All of those are that's all, vocabulary and terminology straight from the software development industry. And so the more that we leverage knowledge management techniques based on best practices from software development techniques, including the Git process and, version management and peer review and issues and everything, the more we look to the software development world for lessons in how to manage our knowledge, even if we're not a technologist, the more we win. And that begins with coming up with the syntax. We're not talking about Python or something like that. We're talking about the syntax of knowledge. What is the most universal way to write your knowledge down such that it can be shared with everyone else, and that you have a consistent, easy way to capture that knowledge that can be read in source form as well as in HTML. And if you want to go read about this, you can. I think HTML was a bad idea. It was developed for engineers by engineers, and it sucks. And so along comes John Gruber and Aaron Swartz, one of you'll remember we did the tribute to Aaron. Aaron Swartz is one of the inventors of Markdown because he was obsessed with knowledge. But John Gruber gets most of the credit for this. And so when we talk about, yes, it is Zettelkasten is totally solid for knowledge. It is. It absolutely is. So when it comes to time to manage our writing, so John Gruber and Aaron Swartz, I'll let you look them up because I want to finish in time. They created Markdown, and they were writers and podcasters. They did code, but their primary love was writing and podcasting, and they hated HTML. They hated that it's very verbose to write it. It was made by an engineer. It was created to require yet another tool just to be able to use the thing. And that's very much an engineering approach. Beware of that, by the way. Why are we overcomplicating this thing? I think, well, we'll just make another tool for them to use the overly complicated thing. Well, we could have just done, a hashtag for a title. There you go, right? Instead of like wrapping it in a title thing and making sure it's, well-formed and all this crap. That's an engineer coming up with a solution. That's not a writer coming up with a solution. So I have to say HTML was made by engineers, and Markdown was made by writers. And therefore, Markdown is hands down king when it comes to writing. There have been novels written in it. There have been textbooks written in it. About this time, somebody from the crowd will usually mention LaTeX, and I think I said that right, which is a very popular, very, very highly technical and engineered way to create textbooks that have really complicated mathematical forms in them and everything. Well, guess what? Markdown can do that as well. Yeah, LaTeX. And Pandoc Markdown in particular can convert LaTeX embedded within the Markdown into everything. Yes, the answer, you should write everything in Markdown. everything should be written in Markdown. You're like, well, what's Markdown? So the next question when it comes to Markdown is which Markdown? There are so many Markdowns out there. I've actually followed JGM quite a bit. The guy who created Common Mark, he's the one who wrote Pandoc. He's the leader of the Pandoc team. I'll let you go search for Pandoc. It's Pandoc. You can read about that. And Pandoc was created at Berkeley University by a philosophy professor for the writing, and a lot of the academic world has picked up on LaTeX and on Pandoc because they need to write. I mean, their most important thing is writing in very complex ways, and the rest of us are just trying to get our ideas down on paper, and we're like, well, why would I do what an academic does? Well, so along comes, Pandoc, which takes the idea of Markdown, which was invented by a writer with simple coding skills. And he said, well, we need to create some structure around this because it was created by a writer and not an engineer. It's got problems. I mean, here's how do you do this particular case? And I'm not going to send you. I'm going to try to avoid wasting time here, but make sure you read the specification for something called Common Mark. Common Mark was JGM's effort to get GitHub to come to the table and to get everybody else and say, let's agree on a Markdown for the world. And the result was Common Mark. And Common Mark is a really great start for knowledge. Now, the reason that I have extended my standard that I suggest to people to include eventually Pandoc is because Common Mark does not capture math notation. And you cannot say that something is, no, it doesn't work in here. I wish it did. You cannot say that you're going to use a syntax for knowledge if you don't include math. And that's why I find Pandoc Markdown to be the supreme ruler, because it allows all of the things that Common Mark do, and it extends it in a way that's minimal but critical. It allows you to put math in there. So, and I've had people that I've mentored take all of their science notes. They learned K-Tex and math, and their websites their note websites are equivalent to like textbooks, because they've actually included the notation for the different math, and they learned it as along the way while they were learning how to write their notes. And if you learn that before you go to college, and if you're doing math or machine learning or something, you'll really rule the day, because your notes will be like as good as university textbooks, and you'll be able to present those notes in your college applications or going forward in other ways. So let me cut to the chase. Pandoc Markdown is what I believe is the most powerful version of Markdown long term. I have a webpage currently up that talks about Markdown that will probably move, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So it's rwx.gg/lang/md. And this is my current, this will probably be moving into a Zettelkasten very soon. But this tells you my summary thoughts on this, and I'm going to end this video now pretty soon. I'm going to let you go learn it on your own, but I'm going to teach you basic in 5 minutes. So Markdown is a simple Markdown language, blah, blah, blah. Companies depend on it. Reasons for Markdown. Why are there differences? What about wikis? What about restructured text? If you have those questions, you can go research those. And then this is my own organization of this. I find Markdown to fall into 3 categories. Basic, which works everywhere. This includes Discord. A lot of people don't know that you can write you can write Markdown in Discord. You can in Slack, by the way. It's still one of Slack's greatest failures, is you cannot use Markdown to compose Slack messages. We just had somebody have a problem with that today. But if you could use Markdown in Discord, you can actually use it. You can use, your italicization and all that stuff. Common is the way that's universal across the board. There's another one here called GitHub flavored Markdown. That's what you use for GitHub. It's largely compliant with Common Mark. And then Pandoc. Pandoc brings in some of the higher end stuff. But I want to teach you basic Markdown really quickly. Now, the idea behind basic Markdown is get rid of redundancy. All right. So one of the things that the writers, Gruber and Schwartz, and creators of Markdown brought to the table was this idea of artistic expression in the source. And if you're a developer, you know that that's a bad thing, right? You don't want literally 10 ways to do italics. You don't want an infinite number of ways to indicate a hard line. To indicate a horizontal rule. You want one specific way, and you want to standardize on that way because it's going to cognitively be easier for you to write about. But more importantly, if you agree to follow this particular more strict version for yourself, you can code up things that deal with this stuff with the command line. Okay, so for example, I have a bunch of boost items here, right? In order for me to see every single title, I can do head on everything and look at the first line of the whole thing, and I will get the first line title of every single thing. Now, let me tell you right now that there's another way to do that. It's called an ATX header. I think it might be a setx header, I think. And there's another way to do a level 1 header by putting an underline underneath it instead of using the hashtag. Why on earth would I do that? Why would I have to take care of both of those two ways of doing it? It would remove my ability to parse and deal with the data. So what I believe is, what I believe the reason for this basic proposal to you, it's my proposal, is that it will save you from the cognitive and the scripting overhead of having multiple ways of doing it. There certainly are tools to deal with the more complicated ways, but if you follow this method, you can use very simple, basic scripting techniques to leverage to do very powerful things with your Zettelkasten repos. And so what are they? 1-star italics. You can do lots of different ways. I don't even remember all the different ways at this point. 2 stars for bold. 3 stars for bold italics. The end. I know you can use underscore in there somewhere. Don't even do it. GitHub doesn't even allow it because it gets problematic when you put it in the middle of a word. All right. Just don't even think about that. Use 1 star for italics, 2 stars for bold, 3 stars for bold italics. Use backticks for monospace font. Okay. That works everywhere. What about underscore? That talks about that. We're not going to do that. Escaping. You can escape any, this is a common mark thing. So it's not going, any fancy character, including the $sign, can have a backslash put in front of it. I do suggest you put a backslash in front of the $sign because the $sign is used in Pandoc for LaTeX inclusions. Like if you want to put an epsilon in the middle of something, it's $signs, and then you put this stuff inside of it, and then another $sign. So I encourage you to get into the habit of backslashing $sign. That's not something that's required by Markdown, but it is allowed by Common Mark, which is the basis of all of this. And so then we have this headings. So for headings, just always use hashtags. 1 hashtag for 1, 2 hashtags for 2, 3 hashtags for 3. Just know if you go beyond 3 levels, you're usually not going to get much visual distinction. So I usually try to stick to 1, 2, or 3. If you're using a Zettelkasten approach, you're just going to be using level 1 and rarely a level 2. Very rarely a level 3. You're not going to be doing more than that because why? Because if you're getting that deep into your document, you're now not making a composable, solid principle, Zettelkasten thing. It's probably time for you to break some of that stuff out and put it into separate Zettel, readmes. And then when you're getting ready to create a final document, maybe consider doing the deeper level of nesting like that, so you can compose that all back together and make a document. But during the day, very rarely are you going to use more than 1 hashtag or 2 hashtags, just when you're just editing your knowledge as it's flowing out of you all day. So formatting is, of course, allowed. For hyperlinks, hyperlinks are the stuff you click on. There's generally 3 things you can click on: words, URLs, raw URLs, and images. For hyperlinking to words, you can do this. Here is a link. You have this, and then this comes right after it. That's called an inline link. My position on inline links has changed this week. If the link is longer than 50 characters and forces the line to wrap, I will now use a reference link, which I don't cover here. A reference link, just to show you one, is when you put it on its own line. So you see these links here? This is not covered in that page. I need to update it. So, and this has largely been brought about because of the Zettelkasten stuff. When you have a link that's really long, rather than putting parentheses here, you can put, if you leave it blank, by the way, and you put the same exact words down here, you can just put it that way. Otherwise, you can put a kind of a reference down here, and then you can put your link in here. And I do recommend putting angle brackets around it, just for consistency. It's not required, but just makes it easier to read. And then that way you can link to the stuff. Okay, so then we're gonna come back here. So types of Markdown, we talked about this. wait, what's up with that? I thought we already did that. Okay. So, auto linked URLs. So if you put angle brackets, that's what these less than or greater than are, around a link, it will automatically link. On GitHub, it will detect the schema by default. Never depend on that though. It is not common mark to do that. So the standard way to do this is it doesn't take that long. In fact, anytime you ever put a long link anywhere in your document, you should get in the habit of putting angle brackets around it because it's allowed in referential links. And it's here you wouldn't. Here's one case where you wouldn't see this. This is actually a link that has brackets around it. That's why there's double brackets. The brackets are inside of the link. Reduces the cast of dominating like Pomo. Right. Feels great. Exactly. 25 minutes. 25 lines or 25 minutes, and I'm over my time, so I got to finish. Images. So the only thing that's different for an image is you just put an exclamation point in front. Whatever this is here will become the alt text for the image. And I can't emphasize this enough. Always put images on their own line. Make an image a paragraph. Don't try to inline images. It breaks every time. It's a bad idea. If you think you want to put a little emoji in there or something, don't do it. It's just going to mess you up. So if you need a figure or an image, put the image on its own paragraph. That means separated by a blank line, and then have it be there. So here's an example of an image that you can click on. It takes you to RWX Rob Live, and such. Okay, so lists. This is Bork. It shouldn't be doing this. This is Firefox. Firefox has got some really weird white space issues. So this is all supposed to be straight up and down right here. That just use dots for your bulleted lists. You can use pluses and dashes and minuses and all sorts of stuff. Just remember to use dots and you'll be good. Always use one dot for your lists. The reason for that is because you can move stuff around later and not have to redo your numbering. And you know what? Even if you have a fancy editor that will redo the numbering for you, the next person that uses your content might not have that. So don't do that. Don't do that. Just use one dot. Common Mark and Pandoc both support the use of this instead if you want to. I think I sometimes think I might want to do that someday, but I don't. And this is one dot is the original standard, and so I use the original. But as you can see, it gets renumbered once it appears here. Separators. This is the one that drives me crazy. There are so many different ways to do a horizontal rule separator that it's insane. Don't do it. Just use 4 dashes. I promise you, if you use 4 dashes, you'll be so happy because then you can find it later. You can search through the code and jump to the horizontal rule by just looking for the first 4 dashes. If you don't use 4 dashes, fine. Use something that's consistent for you, but I suggest using the 4 dashes. Hard returns. Hard returns, anytime you put 2 or 3 spaces and you hit a return, it'll create a new line inside of a paragraph. That's pretty standard. Common Mark does allow you to put a backslash so you can visually see it. I've thought about that at some point, but this is the best way. I think I still like just the spaces. Here we go. So that's what it would do. Blocks. So blocks are things that are separated off from everything else. You've probably seen these. I wish, you know what? I'm opening this in Chrome. This is pissing me off. I'm sorry. I know it's going to take more time, but I cannot tolerate this stupid Firefox thing. It gets some things really wrong. And that's one of them. It really kind of angers me. What? Okay. So I'm tired of making excuses for this stupid browser. So here's the code fences we were talking about. Let me jump ahead to them. And I'm almost done, I promise. I'm over, I know, but so wait, why did this one do it now? Did I delete the wrong one? I did. I cannot win, people. Anyway, so there we go. You have, we have the blocks. The blocks are triple backticks. That will just give you a verbatim block. Code fences have the name of the code in there, and that gives you something that shows you syntax highlighting. I have mine turned off here. And then here's all the different languages that are supported. And then the only exception I make to this is you can use squiggly lines if you're actually using Markdown. So if you want to put Markdown in a block, you kind of have to use one of the other options, and that's squiggle lines. And I'll let you go read this on your own. You don't need to read. You don't need to spend more time here with me. Block quotes are just angle brackets. You can do on every line, or you can do just one on one line and then not have it continue. So here's like 2 lines. This is what it does, the block quote. Comments, that's a comment if you want to put a comment in your Markdown. And that's pretty much it. So it's very simple. Again, it's out there. It'll be in the notes if you want to go there. I just suggest finding your own way. I really strongly suggest that specific way so that we can get some consistency. I actually almost wrote, I was very seriously writing, I wrote an ABNF for it and everything to write an RTF IT Internet Task Force specification for this form of it. And I've actually written a parser for it and everything. That's why I wrote Pagan. This is a language parser just to define basic Markdown so that people can start using it reliably and know that they're not going to have to get away from that. But truthfully, I've mostly been just using CommonMark and Pandoc as the tools for rendering that Markdown, which we will cover at later on in the boost. So the reason I wanted to cover the knowledge syntax right now and all this note taking stuff now is because as we go into the boost, you're going to immediately need to start taking lots of notes. And so I wanted to cover that today before we got into the rest. And then later on, we're going to do a week-long thing about publishing knowledge and using Pandoc to do blog, static site generation. And you can write an entire static site generator in 10 lines of shellcode with Pandoc using this method. So, it's very easy to do if you just start out this way, but I had to talk about it now so that you would start out right and start taking your notes in Markdown so that you don't have to go redo all your notes later. All right, so take some time at your homework, learn about Markdown, start your own repos, start practicing with the Zettelkasten method. If you need to borrow a script or two to do that little date thing to get the ISOSEC, that's probably the only thing that you might want to code right now just to save yourself some time. And that's all I have. That's really all I have for tonight. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and mark this video. All right. And we're over. I apologize. We're 23 minutes over tonight. If there's any other, I'm gonna put the pomo, the potato out of its. I should make the tomato squash itself. Is there like a squash tomato emoji? or get like CLI tools like Pomo. I know the idea is focus, but what instead of how? But can you share your CLI tools like Pomo? Yeah, my tools are all over. That stuff's all in my dot repo, my dot files repo. So you can go through there and sift through there and see anything you want. Again, I encourage you to do that. That's the nature of learning, doing your own research and figuring it out. I'm not stopping you from learning everything right now and just jumping in and getting your hands dirty. There's no rules here. You don't have to wait for anything. You can do whatever you want. You want to go write your own Zettelkasten script right now and teach yourself Bash and just screw around with it. And even though you don't know shell scripting yet and just kind of get your hands dirty, go for it. Go for it. You want to try to get yourself a Docker container? Go for it. You can't break anything. So if you want to run ahead fast and try stuff out, I encourage you to do that. I'm not saying do it if you don't feel bad if you don't get a chance to do that, but I'm also not stopping anybody from doing anything. We're just here in sort of an organized way to make sure that we cover as much of the stuff in order as possible, so we don't miss something. That's mostly the reason I'm doing it. Again, the purpose here is to help you know what you don't know, not to teach it to you, and then help you identify those things, and secondarily to cover stuff that's not covered anywhere else, such as Zettelkasten and using GitHub. I've never seen anybody present any method of using GitHub for Zettelkasten, so that's one of the things I had to go into depth on, or how to make a Pomo timer or something like that. All right, so that is pretty much it for me. The beveled 3D lines. Sir John, you're dating yourself, my friend. How's it going, Graph Guy? What a great name for today. We were talking about Zettelkasten, and I was just going to say, if your graph is in anything about graph theory, then I think you would appreciate the Zettelkasten discussion tonight. It's all graph theory applied to knowledge management. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. We're publishing less markup and more programming so our web developers actually know how to code instead of pushing this front-end only ecosystem. No, I don't agree with that. Less markup, more programming. No. No. There's a lot of contradictions in that statement, actually. First of all, never once did I mention the web, other than that maybe this stuff could be pushed out to the web, right? The reason that I think that Markdown is so important to be what you write your knowledge in, instead of like in some CMS, content management system where you type in an HTML and stuff, is because you own the content. When you use WordPress for this kind of stuff, your content is shuffled away in some database somewhere and you have no way to get it out, short of finding some export function or some plugin or something. The reason that this works is because it works anywhere. You don't even have to have GitHub. You could be taking your notes in a folder on the top of your desktop and just decide that you want to follow this method without even having GitHub. If you don't want to use GitHub the way I did, you don't have to use it that way. You don't. You can just create a folder on your desktop, maybe on a USB stick, so you have a backup, and then just start naming directories the same way and naming the files in there. And when it comes time to save that someplace else beside your USB stick, you can put it in GitHub if you want. The whole point is simplicity, because if it's not simple, if it's overcomplicated, you won't do it. And you'll become dependent on somebody else's idea of how you should do it, and then you'll be screwed because now you don't have the flexibility to be able to move your knowledge around. And if there's one thing our world is suffering from right now, it's being dictated to about how we exchange knowledge. And how the World Wide Web was supposed to be many other things. And Tim Berners-Lee has been the first person, the inventor of the World Wide Web. He's been the first person to come forward and say, oh my God, it's not at all what I thought. Because Google, mostly, SEO optimization and all this other stuff. We want to free knowledge. We want to let knowledge out. That means we should be able to do the same sort of system on paper in Zettelkasten like Nicholas Luhmann did before there was even a computer to use. Or we should be, and share those, by the way. He could share that with anybody. It could come into his room. God help him if he spilled coffee on it. Oh my God, can you imagine? But, it's this ability to share and to keep the technology at the lowest common denominator. This is something you're going to learn about me really quick. I love technology, but I've been around the block long enough to know that adding technology for the sake of, well, wouldn't this be cool, always ends in pain and suffering. So you add technology as needed, and you add the minimum amount of technology. And I'm not a conservative guy, but when it comes to this sort of thing, you need to make your case as to why I need to use technology here. Because every time we add technology to something, we remove people from being able to use it. This is why I'm an avid cryptocurrency anti-person, because in a world where cryptocurrency dominates, half of the world can't even participate because they don't have access to a computer. First of all, and we need to use the minimum possible technology. Technology is there to enable humanity. It's not there to exclude. And so as soon as you make HTML only accessible to people who have a web browser or know how to use this tool, front page or whatever, to be able to write web content, you've now put that possibility to share their knowledge in the hands of only that elite few who know how to do that. And that is anti-human to do that. And this is one of my major rants, is that when we use technology to exclude, we're doing it wrong. And we need to start removing layers of technology and simplifying to enable more people in the world to participate. There. How's that for a go? I'll go out with that. How's that? It's time to raid somebody else. It's just so sad that more people don't agree with that. I run into engineers every day who think, oh, hey, let's add this cool little thing for no reason at all. And they don't realize how many people they just eliminated from participating. And some people think it's cool. In fact, technocrats think that you should do that. In fact, a lot of this crypto movement is being run by technocrats who, if they had their way, would rule the fucking world. I'm sorry, that was my one F word for the night. They would rather have the leadership, and they'll attack the existing power structures, because at the end of the day, they're not trying to enable everybody to buy a pizza anywhere for 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, what they're really trying to do is take control away from the power structures that have control because they disagree with them. Now, I might not agree with them either, but that's not the reason to use cryptocurrency, among other things. I'm just using that technology as a reason because technology is often used deliberately to separate, and I have big problems with that. All right. Did you watch the Swartz documentary? Yeah. I read it for almost a decade. I'm embarrassed to let anybody. Yeah. Yeah. Take care, Turtle. Saturday, I'll be back. I think I'll be back on Saturday. I don't know what time yet, just so everybody knows. If you guys need to take off, take off. Ask Aquarium in production. Go for it, Sir John. It's one shell script. The Master Lich. By the way, everything that I've said about technology and philosophies that are causing separation, I'm not attacking anyone. I have to say this every time. I am not attacking any person. If you have a friend who likes it, my best friend is a big cryptocurrency proponent. I am not attacking him. I'm attacking the idea. And ideas should be viscerally attacked with skepticism. One of the themes for tonight has been the scientific method, and that means looking at ideas and new proposals with extreme skepticism and extreme contempt from the beginning, because the best will emerge. And I'm not attacking the person that's dogmatically associated with that technology. I get thrown under the bus all the time because people think I'm attacking them, and sometimes I am. But most of the time I'm not. Most of the time I'm attacking an idea or practice or something like that. And frankly, we need more of that. We need more active debate around the technologies that are becoming dominant in our world. So yeah, React and Blazor with force me to code a certain way. Yeah. That's why you don't buy Doge. I did watch a little somebody streaming about Doge the other night, and I just was just shaking my head. I was shaking my head. It's like, first of all, why, what are we even doing the technology for? I mean, if the reason that you think technology matters is so we can be better entertained, then we already are not going to be drinking beers together. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you think that the reason technology exists is to better entertain you, look, I love a good computer game, and I love watching movies, and I love all of the great things that are out there. But if you think that the goal of technology is only to become more entertained, as Linus Torvalds said in his own book, Linus Torvalds said that the future of humanity is entertainment. I can quote it to you right now. I was like, I cannot believe that he wrote that. It's like, they've done everything. They've covered all the bases. Now the only thing left is entertainment. I was like, what? Yeah, just for fun. Yep. Yeah. Did you remember that part in the front? Yeah. I think part of it's true. If you've watched, we're just kind of shooting the whatever right now. But if you watch the sci-fi, The Expanse, one of the best parts of The Expanse is it covers, it imagines a world where all the bases have been covered on planet Earth in terms of careers. So if you have a job, you're special, and everybody else's needs are paid for, and they're given drugs for free and everything. But the people who actually get to go to school and have a career, which we're seeing in some of the Asian countries right now, actually, only certain people are allowed to progress in their schooling. Otherwise, you don't even get the schooling. You can't even get a job. And it's not like you need a job. It's like they've covered all their bases so well that there aren't that many jobs to go around, but they've also covered the things of there's minimum subsistence for the rest of humanity. Whereas the people who actually break into the system and who get a job, and so people will take sacrifices and they'll go out to the belt and they'll go out to Mars, where it's the complete opposite on Mars. On Mars, every single person's contribution matters a ton. And there's this totally different ethos on Mars about doing your part. And it's kind of this pioneer spirit. And I just really love how The Expanse sets these mindsets apart from one another at the verge of war, because humanity has gotten so, sort of lazy and covered everything and lax, and the Martians are like kicking butt in order to survive every day. And this dichotomy between the two thought processes, I just really love it, because you see this today. You're starting to see this idea, because people are, well, I got my job, everything's covered. And then there's other people who are still starving, who can't even get a job, and it's just, people's greatest concern is who their favorite, game streamer is. And meanwhile, there's people dying all around them, and even, they'd rather stick their head in the sand than offer some better contribution to the world, to help elevate everybody. And I'm not bagging on anybody in particular. I'm bagging on the ideology of head in the sand. I don't have anything to offer. The world critically needs more people to engage in things that matter. It doesn't mean you can't be entertained, but the first world problems, it totally is. And I'm not here to thrash anybody in particular. I am just saying that there is still a lot of work to be done in humanity, and that work ain't going to get done, focusing on entertainment and stuff like that. And yet people talk about these things as if they are the most important thing on planet Earth, either as a job or as, think about it. If people put in half the amount of energy that it took like Bethesda to release any one of their games, 90-hour work weeks and stuff like that. If you took those minds and those people and you put that level of dedicated effort, or professional sports, for example, if you took that money and that effort and that energy and you applied it to some really important social problem that's affecting all of us, but humanity continues to choose the easy, ignoring everything way. And I'm just going to put a call out to everybody before I go to bed. Don't do that. Don't do that. We need you. Humanity needs you. All right, let's go. I'm going to go raid somebody. Who are we going to go raid? Who are we going to raid? All right. So someone doing a game jam. You know what? I used to think it was okay to learn how to code games because it was going to parlay into something else. And often it does, but I don't believe in that anymore. To raid your previous day streams. Oh, thanks, please. PJ's here. Let's go to, you guys can do whatever you want. Go raid. I just, it's a Twitch thing that Twitch people do. So should we raid a hot tub? I always joke about that, but it was so fun. One night when we raided that hot tub was so funny. It was so funny. And I have nothing negative to say to the people that were there. Good old Strager, he's awesome. Oh, there's RW Grimm again. Thanks, Taffetains. These are some of my favorite people right here. I love them all. Should go give Sam Griffin a stream. I don't know what he's doing, but I just really love the dude. I love him a lot. So we're gonna go ahead and rate him. And you guys can. I like rating little people that don't expect us coming. That's always fun too. But I don't have time right now. So, Freeman's doing good stuff too, though. I don't know. So, just tell him hi for me, please. Make sure he knows I said hi. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. Actually, no. Tomorrow night I'm going to the art opening. I'm going to be partying and drinking alcohol and stuff. But Saturday, sometime, look for the calendar on Saturday someplace. I'll show up. It'll probably be during the day. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it Saturday night at the same time. That might be a good idea. I'll keep it at the same time on Saturday night. So, bye.
Hope you know. Yeah, you got VIP, Mr. Sir. Appreciate you. But yeah, thank you for the raid. What were you up to today?